Evening. What's today? May 6th. Welcome. We got a full house here, people. We'll be on our best behavior. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we have a Boy Scout troop, I see. Cub Scout Pack 27. Come on down.
The audience, please rise. Color guard, halt. Post the colors. Scout salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. Color guard dismissed. Please be seated.
Just want to introduce ourselves real quick.
Please do.
Thank you. So this is Cub Scout Pack 27. We meet at the Hillsdale Methodist Church, just by Laurel Elementary School. We've been doing that for over 60 years, so it's a long tradition within the community. And surely with first graders through fifth graders, we need to keep the energy burning, right? So we have lots of fun activities. We go camping, water balloon fights and such. But we also give back to the community. We just had a George Hall cleanup at the elementary school in the village. We also sing carols at a retirement community here in San Mateo. So the kids have been doing a lot. They've learned how to fold the flag appropriately. They heard from a Vietnam War veteran speak to them. So they're trying to give back and at the same time learn some core values. So we appreciate you letting them come here and use and bring the flags. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. You guys did a great job. See you later. Here you go. Keep going. Come on down. Okay. So we will move on to our ceremonial item, roll call. Let's do it.
Councilmember Rick Bonilla is absent due to illness. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Goethals.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Fresquet.
Here.
And Mayor Pappen.
Here. Now, are you ready for ceremonial? Let's do it. Okay, tonight's a very big night. I love this event when it comes every year, I gotta tell you. So it's the night that we honor the 4.0 students from each of the 4 high schools here in San Mateo. These are students that worked extremely hard. They're super smart. And we wish them tremendous luck in their future endeavors. So what we normally do is we turn it over to the principal from each high school to announce each of the students, because we don't want to butcher their beautiful names. And we will start with Aragon, and we'll have Deputy Mayor Fresquet come down to give a certificate to each of the students after being introduced by the principal from Aragon. Please come forward.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you, everyone, and for inviting us to come. This is always a pleasure, and it's exciting to introduce everyone. I do have to tell you, I just had to run out quickly because I didn't realize that the person who was in charge of the Cub Scouts happened to be one of our very favorite teachers at Aragon. Hey. So out there, he said, "Oh my goodness, all my kids are here today." So he was surprised to see you all sitting there. Could I ask for the Aragon students to come down, the valedictorians? So just for the information for those of you that are in the audience and don't know, these are the Aragon valedictorians for this year. They have, for the last 4 years, received an A in every class they've had throughout their all 4 years. So it is a difficult and challenging, but they're very successful, and they've achieved this achievement tonight. So I'm going to go through alphabetically, but when you come up, I'm going to have you come forward, and then you can shake my hand, and you can shake the councilwoman's hand. I should also mention that she is an Aragon grad, so this is why. And notice what color she's dressed in tonight. So the first person we're going to give it to is Mayuko Buffelli. Mayuko. Right here. So, Mayuko has been involved in chamber choir. She plays the violin. She's involved in robotics, yearbook. She's also done through the University of Maine a water quality research project and has organized countywide March for Our Lives rally. Mayuko will be going to UCLA in the fall and will be majoring in mathematics. So you can see I have long lists. I've kind of edited. These kids do everything there is to do. So just they're a wonderful group of kids. Daniel Lee. Daniel he's been on varsity tennis. He's also been involved in the math club. He's qualified for the international mathematics competition. He works as a tennis coach for middle schools, and he also does tutoring at school. He's off to UC Berkeley in the fall, and he's officially undecided, but most likely math or computer science. Congratulations. Sophie Louie. So Sophie is the president of our American Cancer Society. She plays varsity soccer, and she's volunteered at Self-Help for the Elderly. She's on her way to Northeastern University and majoring in computer science in Boston. Congratulations, Sophie. Helen Wu. So Helen is among the top 150 girls and women in competitive math in the United States. She is also our math club president and helps to organize our math competition for our local middle schools that we have each year. She is a Taekwondo instructor, and she is off to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in the fall and majoring in computer science. Congratulations. Alex Ma. Alex. Hi. So Alex helps organize our Model UN conference, and he's also been involved in cross-country CCS championships. He plays the cello in the orchestra, and he's very involved in Key Club, and he does a number of other volunteer activities. Alex is off to UCLA also, and he's going to be majoring in bioengineering. Congratulations. Emma Magic. Emma? So Emma was the San Mateo County Athlete of the Year for cross country in 2017. She is also involved in Service Commission. She works for the American Cancer Society. She's a peer tutor for freshmen. She's worked as an assistant coach at Discover Running, a summer camp designed to introduce youth to running. Emma continues to run all the time, and she has been involved in cross-country and running, I think, the state meet every year, haven't you? So congratulations, Emma. She's going off to Brown University and going to major in comparative literature. And I have to say, I get so excited when I see a humanities major, so I have to say that. Yasmina Mella. Yasmina has an interesting accomplishment. She's traveled to the Middle East to do service work with Syrian refugee children. She goes back frequently to help there. She's on the Aragon tennis team. She's involved in Model UN and also in a program that we have in Aragon called Bring Change to Mind, which is to help with mental health awareness. She's also an intern at a legal profit for equal rights advocates. Yasmina will be going off to the University of Michigan and majoring in political science and international relations. Claire Mason. Hey, Claire. Claire is the editor-in-chief of our newspaper, The Outlook. She won the Best Feature Story in a regional journalist competition. She's involved in Model UN also and does the Big Buddies program. And this is interesting. She's been a Girl Scout for the last 12 years. So you probably had a feeling when the kids came down. Claire is going off to Northwestern and majoring in journalism and psychology. And what's interesting is I think you have to be the second or the third Outlook editor that has gone off to the Northwestern Journalism Program. So congratulations. Ajitesh Nada. Ajitesh has a black belt in karate. He's also a National Merit finalist. He's very involved in Model UN and Harvard Model Congress. He plays boys volleyball, and he volunteers at the Foster City Library. He also will be going off to UC Berkeley and majoring in biochemistry, molecular and cellular biology. Congratulations. Jayla Stokesbury. Hey, Jayla. Jayla has been on the girls' varsity soccer, and she's been MVP for last year and this year. She published a short story in the Blue Marble Review. She's involved in BSU, Black Student Union Club, and also is an algebra tutor. Jayla will be going off to UCLA and majoring in cognitive science. Congratulations. Dorothy? No, Dorothy's not here, right? Alex Wong? Alex Wong? Alex is involved in our tutor club. He's also involved in our First Challenge robotics club. He plays the French horn in the wind ensemble, and he's the co-founder of, he started up a robotics club at St. Matthew's Church to work with middle school students, and he tutors at Aragon. He will be going off to UC Berkeley also in the fall and majoring in computer science. Congratulations. Ethan Wong. Hi, Ethan. Ethan is involved in Model UN and has been the co-president of Harvard Model Congress. He's an intern for State Senator Jerry Hill, and he's involved in other activities for his volunteer youth, and he's off to American universities, and he's going to be studying international studies. Emily Sue. Emily won a national silver medal for scholastic art and writing competition and drawing and illustration. She is also on the Aragon Outlook. She's involved in Harvard Model Congress. She does the Chinese Conversation Club. She's the president of that. She volunteers at San Mateo Public Library. She is going off to Pomona College and will major in economics. Anna Singh. Anna is our student body president. She's also president of the Environmental Club at Aragon, and she's on the executive board of the San Mateo Activist Coalition. Anna will be going off to Yale University and is going to be studying computer science. So, thank you all.
Okay. Very impressive group indeed. So we will next up turn it over to Hillsdale High School. Do we have the principal from Hillsdale? We do. Welcome. Come on down. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's have the Hillsdale recipients come on up, and we'll kind of line up over here. It is a privilege to be here and to introduce these amazing students. We have a number of people who couldn't be here tonight, but we will try to at least recognize them and move through this so that we can get home and watch the Warriors. First up, we'll go in alphabetical order. Where are they? I guess this is our stack. Okay. So we'll start with McKenna Anderson. Didn't get that. Congratulations. McKenna has accepted to Santa Clara, but is going to be attending CSM in the fall. She is undeclared major. She was a starter and volleyball player at Hillsdale for the past 2 years, playing on 2 CCS semifinal teams, and has volunteered at the My New Red Shoes organization in Redwood Shores that provides supplies for students as they enter school. She likes to spend her free time watching The Bachelor. Very academic. Next up, Narayan Ball. Congratulations. Narayan will be attending the University of Portland in the fall, majoring in mechanical engineering. He volunteers with the Key Club and the Middle Eastern Club. He runs and jumps and hurdles for the track and field team and has played on the basketball team. He enjoys working on drones and tinkering with robotics in his free time. Congratulations. Next up is Rachel Caligari. Congratulations. Rachel will be attending UC Davis in the fall, majoring in public health. She volunteers at the Meadow Heights Library, and she's played softball for Hillsdale High School in the last 4 years. She is an ASB officer for Hillsdale, and she completed her senior project on HPV virus and creating a presentation for teenagers on that topic. She drives a stick shift, and if you ever see a Hillsdale blue and red VW bug driving around town, that's her. Next up, Bethany Candler. Bethany will be attending Santa Clara in the fall, majoring in accounting and business. She has been in Hillsdale leadership for several years and is currently the ASB treasurer. She completed her senior project in mathematics and probability and combinations and is a student leader at the First Presbyterian Church in San Mateo. She loves researching travel because her goal is to be on the Amazing Race one day. Next up is, I hope we get the right ones. And we may have to trade them around because we had a few absent. So, oh, great. Good, thank you. Rachel Eisenson. Rachel. Rachel will be attending Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in the fall, majoring in mathematics. She's played soccer at Hillsdale for the past 3 years, is the captain of the lacrosse team. She works with children at the Warnick School in Foster City and volunteers with special needs students in the Friendship Circle in Foster City. And she has been to Machu Picchu with students from Hillsdale High School. Congratulations. Next up, Thomas Karpushin. Thomas will be attending the University of Rochester in the fall, majoring in optical engineering. He is a tremendous cross-country runner, made it to the state tournament this year, is an avid photographer and baseball player. He'll be playing baseball at the University of Rochester next year, trying to up his fastball over that 86-mile-an-hour mark. And he plays bass in a band, a rock band. This kid's a rocker. Congratulations. Next, Charles Lynn. So Charles will be attending Stanford University in the fall, majoring in computational biology. He is an extraordinary violinist, an assistant concertmaster for the Peninsula Youth Orchestra, former concertmaster for the Hillsdale Chamber Orchestra. He has been a researcher at UC San Francisco for the past 2 summers. He ran out of math to take at CSM, so this past year has been doing an online math class through MIT. And he is, with the rest of Hillsdale's science team, once got stuck in an elevator for 40 minutes in the name of physics. So, well done. Next is Olivia Mendoza. Congratulations. Olivia will also be attending Stanford in the fall, majoring in bioengineering. She is a club soccer athlete and played on the HHS varsity golf team. And she has been doing Polynesian dancing since she was 2 years old. And she's finally back dancing after an ACL injury. So congratulations on that. Next, Erin Ju Sands. Erin, congratulations. Erin will be attending UC Santa Barbara, majoring in physics. He is also a member of the Peninsula Youth Orchestra and the Chamber Orchestra. He's a wonderful cellist. He's also played soccer and also varsity volleyball on the boys volleyball team at Hillsdale the last 2 years, and has taken up club volleyball as well. And so he is also fluent in Spanish. So congratulations, Aaron. Next, Kara Sawamura. Kara is another student who will be attending Cal Poly and majoring in business. She enjoys photography and volunteers with children, especially giving back to organizations she participated when she was younger. And most importantly, her favorite dessert is ice cream. So, congratulations. Timon Sepp. Timon will be attending UC Berkeley, majoring in engineering. He is the president of the Hillsdale Robotics team. He is also a member of Team M FTC Robotics and is a president of the Science Club at Hillsdale. He works in Foster City at Vibe, and he moved to the United States from the Netherlands when in 5th grade. So that's a rarity. And finally, Mitchell Yu, who will also be attending UC Berkeley, and undeclared, that's a good one, undeclared, is a musician in both orchestra and jazz, and he has been involved in theater and mock trial at Hillsdale, and he is the lead crossword puzzle writer for the Hillsdale Scroll, the newspaper. So congratulations to everybody from Hillsdale. Thank you very much. Take those. Got the wrong one.
Well, if we're going in alphabetical order, that's what your mayor's capable of, the alphabet. I think that brings us to Sarah High School. So we'll have Councilmember Goethals come down, and if we could ask the principal from Sarah High School to come introduce each of the recipients, that would be fabulous. Come on down. So I don't know the alphabet. Whatever. I have a lot on my mind.
We're still coming up.
You're still coming. Excellent.
Thank you, Mayor Papa. My name is Barry Thorne. I have the honor of serving as Sarah's principal, and we're thrilled to be here with all of the young men and women from the schools throughout San Mateo. So we will also begin introducing these fine young men. The first will be Leland Bowie. His favorite subject is mathematics. He is a soccer player. He does track and field, works in volunteering at his church at St. Charles, is involved in numerous clubs, as all these students are. His community service is tutoring in the library, building houses for families, as well as working with impoverished children and serving food to the needy. He will be attending UC San Diego and is considering computer science, but has not yet decided. Sean Chamberlain. Sean's favorite subjects are history and social studies. He has a diverse set of interests and involvement, including involvement in managing for basketball and being involved in bowling, as well as participating in democracy and the green clubs. He's volunteered in rebuilding Together on the Peninsula. And one of the most interesting service projects, German Shepherd Rescue of Northern California. I didn't know they need help. I'm always deferential to German Shepherds. He will be attending Santa Clara University with a major in history. Charles Cody. Charles' favorite subjects are history, social studies, and mathematics. He is involved in the arts backstage through stage crew, is also involved in the Democracy Club, as well as deeply involved in mock trial. His community service involves working with seniors in San Mateo Senior Center, as well as St. Anthony's. He will be studying economics and will begin his academic career at the College of San Mateo. Welcome. William Fitzgerald. Thank you. Favorite subject is science. He is also involved in stage crew for the fall plays and the musicals, speaks French, involved with video game and green clubs. His community service includes tutoring children and volunteering with breakfast for the elderly. He plans to attend UC Davis with a major in civil engineering. Pranav Kaura. Welcome, congratulations. His favorite subject is mathematics. His extracurriculars include the robotics club, where he is the captain, as well as mock trial, where he served as an attorney. He's also a varsity tennis team member and a member of the math club. His community service includes volunteering at St. Anthony's Dining Hall. He's mentored students in, this would be the club that I would be involved in, Lego robotics at the kids' summer camp. That would be awesome. He plans to attend UC Berkeley and majoring in mechanical engineering. Lee Moyer. Lee, thank you. Favorite subjects are mathematics and science. He loves soccer, has also served on the mock trial team. He has a wide range of service passions, is a service chair for the National Honor Society. He's worked with senior co-siders, worked with serving food to the elderly, spent a tremendous amount of time working with students with disabilities. He plans to attend UCLA with a major in aerospace engineering. Sarah chooses 3 valedictorians out of all of the students for the year, and Lee is one of those 3 valedictorians. Thank you. Rami Muhawi. Congratulations, Rami. Favorite subject is mathematics. He has enjoyed soccer and baseball and track and field, trivia, and the ultimate Frisbee clubs. He received the Blanket Award. That's our most outstanding student in soccer, and was a WCAL first-team all-league soccer player this year for the school. Community service involves volunteering at the Humane Society, as well as the retirement center at Green Hills. He plans to go to UC Davis and major in applied mathematics. Keelan O'Riordan. Congratulations, Keelan. Keelan just about broke my hand with that handshake. Extracurriculars include varsity football team, where he's a captain, varsity track and field, an athletic standout, scholar athlete, received all league honors in football, track and field, including shot put and discus. Community service is working at the senior center with the senior track and field events. He will be attending UCLA with a major in physics. Giuliano Rodriguez. Passion for history and social studies. Extracurriculars include mentoring young students. He's involved in student leadership on our executive council. He's a leader in our campus ministry program, as well as being involved in service immersion trips for extended periods of times, both to Puerto Rico and to East LA. He's a pitcher on the baseball team, also has played soccer. He will be attending UCLA with a major in business economics, and Giuliano is also one of our 3 valedictorians. Patrick Takla. Congratulations. Favorite subject is science, an environmental officer for his class, international student mentor, and a mentor for our younger students. Loves tennis, has played all 4 years, as well as coached the sport. Community service involves serving and volunteering with the Wheelers program at Bell Mateo Bowl. After discovering interest in medicine, he also began serving at the Mills Peninsula Medical Center. He plans to attend my alma mater, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and major in biological sciences. And then 2 additional students, Raymond Zhang and Nick Lockery, were not able to attend, but I want to acknowledge them as well. Outstanding young men, and Nick Lockery is one of our valedictorians as well. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Good to see you again.
So without further ado, we'll have San Mateo High School.
Good evening, Mayor Pappen, San Mateo City Council. My name is Yvonne Chu, the principal of San Mateo High School, and I am very happy to introduce to you San Mateo's valedictorians. 4 of the 5 are here tonight. Jessica Aftimus. I'm like, there's an extra S in here, and I knew I would pronounce it incorrectly. Jessica is one of a few students who has managed to take dance all 4 years while at San Mateo. She's been active in our Students in Action Club and Key Club in her junior and senior years. As a junior, she was San Mateo High School's Girls State Representative and participated in Chalk Fest 3 out of her 4 years. You might think that she might be pursuing a future in the arts. However, Jessica would like to study aerospace engineering in the fall at USC. Congratulations, Jessica. Next up, alphabetical order, Christopher Knoll. Christopher has been a member of the San Mateo High School Marching Band all 4 years at San Mateo. 2 of the 4 years, he has been a member of the concert choir, Smash Club, the track and field team, and the green team. He has spent the last 4 summers pursuing his interest in earth sciences by excavating fossils at digs in Montana, Colorado, and Kansas. He cataloged and identified fossil specimens as a paleontological collections intern at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science and researched marine fossils, body size evolution over 541 million years as an intern with the Stanford Earth Young Investigators Program. He was also a volunteer at the Presidio Archaeological Lab. This may not be a surprise, but Christopher will be studying geological sciences at Stanford University in the fall. Congratulations. Next, Tamiya Ozawa. Tommy's passion is baseball. Baseball and baseball. While at San Mateo, he has played baseball all 4 years and started on the varsity team as a sophomore. He was first team All-League in 2017 and 2018, and he is one of our co-captains for San Mateo's varsity baseball team this year. He is also a CSF lifetime member. He is uncommitted at this time, but wishes to study materials engineering or industrial technology in the fall. Congratulations, Tommy. Leanne Ting. Leanne has been an active member of the music program all 4 years while at San Mateo. She has played the trombone in the marching band, symphonic band, and jazz band. In her junior year, Leanne was the band co-president, and in her senior year, she was in charge of publicity. In freshman through junior year, she was also a member of the track and field team. She played tennis all 4 years at San Mateo and was also the girls' tennis captain this past year. She was also in student government and served as a health and beauty commissioner and was the Mahjong Club president. Outside of school, Leanne volunteered at the Life Moves Shelter as an attack art camp counselor. Is that right? No. 2 different things. Oh, sorry. Life Moves Shelter and as an art attack camp counselor. Got it. In the fall, Leanne will be going to UC Berkeley to study engineering. Congratulations. And our last young man, Patrick Yin, he's been San Mateo High School's math team all 4 years as co-president. He's also active on San Mateo's Green Team and Interact Club since sophomore year. When he's not busy with school stuff, he does extensive volunteer work, also doing things that I can't pronounce, but Patrick led an ecological research project looking at the most effective way to remove invasive species Limonium ramosycium from our local marshes, and he was just recently one of 4 San Mateo High School students invited to present in Santa Barbara at the California Society of Ecological Restoration. He's not here tonight because he co-founded a martial arts club instructing students in 8th grade and has been teaching weekly kung fu classes to kids ages 3 through 6 and has about 10 students per week. So that's where he is tonight. He has also gone with our Interact Club to the Native American Reservation in Eureka the last 2 spring breaks to build playgrounds for the Yurok tribe. Patrick is a National Merit Finalist and is a Regents and Chancellor Scholar at UC Berkeley, where he will be studying computer science and applied math. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I just want to conclude with 2 remarks. I guess I'll just do it from here. 2 things I'd like to say. One, I'd like to have a big round of applause for all the caregivers and parents who supported all these brilliant minds for all these years. You deserve it. And then the last thing I would like to say is, I think my fellow council members would probably concur with me. I think the future is in very good hands. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your hard work. We look forward to your accomplishments. Joseph, you're not kidding. Okay, while we have everyone clearing out, I think what we may start to do, as everyone clears out, can you hear me? This doesn't seem like it's on. I never saw it. I never saw it. This is all the things I saw. So let's, if we could, we'll go to the consent calendar, and we will have the items read on the consent calendar.
Okay, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 2, City Council meeting minutes approval. Item number 3, ordinance adoption, wastewater treatment plant modifications. Item number 4, board and commission subcommittee appointments. Item number 5, refinance outstanding bonds of the South Bayside Waste Management Authority and finance certain improvements to the solid waste management facilities of the South Bayside Waste Management Authority. Resolution. Technology Staffing Services Agreement. Housing for All Community Engagement Project Grant Agreement. Fiesta Meadows Park Pathway Renovation Contract. Item number 9, Citywide Operations Management System Purchase Agreement. Item number 10, Police Vehicle Purchases. Item number 11, Basin 1B Collection System Improvements Project Construction Agreement. Item 12, Basin 1B Collection System Improvements Project Design Services Amendment. Item 13, Rochester Street and Ottawa Street Reconstruction Project Amendment. Item 14, Labor Compliance Consultants for Clean Water Program Agreements. Item 15, Georgetown Street Reconstruction Project Contract Change Order. Item 16, Fleet Maintenance Agreement Amendment. Item 17, Pacific Boulevard Urgent Roadway Repair Agreement Amendment. Item 18, Wastewater Treatment Plant Nutrient Removal and Wet Weather Management Upgrade and Expansion Project Amendment. Item 19, Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission Appointment, Subcommittee Recommendation. Item 20, Crossroads Office Complex Estoppel Certificate.
Anybody wishing to pull an item? No? I would like to pull 5, just for a brief comment. That's it.
If I could say for the record, our new Sustainability and Infrastructure Commissioner is in the House and can be sworn in if you'd like to pull that item too.
Great. We will pull that. That was which number? Was it the last one? 19? Okay, we'll pull that one as well. Do I have a motion on the remaining items on the consent calendar?
You don't have to pull that one, I think we can pass it and swear it in. Okay. Just pull 5.
Okay. Excellent.
So moved. Move to approve the consent.
All but for number 5. Second?
Second.
Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great. No opposed, no abstentions. All items passed for number 5. I just pulled number 5 because it's very rare that money is saved. So I wanted to compliment the I always say it wrong, so let me get it right in front of me here. SBWMA for their $10 million savings. That's the only reason why I pulled it. Joe, you're to be complimented. With that, we'll entertain a motion for number 5.
Move approval.
All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. Okay. So we will now move on to public comment. That passes. Sorry. Let's swear in our new sustainability and information. Here she is. Come on down. So, the winner from the other night's interviews is Jackie Nunez. Congratulations. And without further ado, we'll have you sworn in.
You're going to repeat after me, and when I say aye, you're going to fill in your first name loud and proud. Okay? Raise your right hand. I
Jacqueline Nunez,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and to the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Congratulations. Okay, we will move on to public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the City Council at this time. State law prevents council from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to a staff for follow-up. Public comment is limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, An opportunity for additional public comment may be provided later in the agenda. Do we have anybody that has submitted public comment slips? Madam Clerk?
There is one speaker,
Okay.
Just written it.
and it is John Barriole.
Okay.
And for this item, we're going to be using the old-time speaker count system.
Hi, my name's John Barrelier. It's been about a year and a half since I've stood before you and commented about the red light cameras. I'm here again because I have a piece of paper here that says what you've been doing since they started might be not according to due process. The Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment are the due process amendments. It simply means that when you put a law in effect, and we're talking about the red light cameras, that your dots over the I's and the T's have been crossed and everything's hunky-dory. In South San Francisco, they neglected to do that because they didn't ratify the vote and they had to give back more than $3 million. I have a piece of paper in my hand that's from your city hall saying that you didn't have the necessary traffic and engineering survey in place. As of 2017, you never had it, but you were providing a radar study and a speed study in its place, neither of which is acceptable in court. You have to have the full survey. The Traffic and Engineering Survey determines the 85th percentile speed limit, which is very important because it's by that the yellow light is determined, the duration of the yellow light. At 25 miles an hour, it's 3.0 seconds. That's the duration of the yellow light. At 35 miles an hour, it's 3.6. That's 0.6 of a second more. You never had that. Also, in your contract with Redflex, it was determined that they were going to hire a C10 electrical contractor. This paper says they didn't do it. It's from your office. You didn't hire an electrical contractor. In essence, what you did was to hire an unlicensed contractor. Now think of that and all of its ramifications. That means there might be a difficulty with workman's compensation, with your stated, by your city charter, minimum salary. What about the rest of the insurance? I'll leave a copy of this for you, but in my non-legal attitude, it seems to me that you didn't follow due process, and the result of that was an extreme effect on the families that have been ticketed $500, $490 for God knows how long. Think of the impact as far as a girl not having her quinceañera, or a boy going to high school not being able to pay his sports dues, and so he can't get a scholarship to college. Unforgivable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we will move on to the first calendared item, which is our shared mobility regulations. Hello, Sue Ellen, Lily, come on down. Oh, Andrea, sorry, Andrea.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Chow.
Hi, Sue Ellen Atkinson.
Our presentation today is on shared mobility regulations. We will start with an overview of what shared mobility is and present San Mateo's bike share history. Then we will discuss the research we've done on shared mobility in other cities and dive into our proposed regulations for shared mobility in San Mateo. So what is shared mobility? Shared mobility is a term used to describe transportation services and resources that are shared among users. This includes bike and electric scooter or e-scooter sharing programs. These services benefit the community by providing critical first and last mile solutions that connect users to transit, work, or home. These shared mobility devices, such as bikes and e-scooters, are stored in the public right-of-way, as shown in this picture. So once a user is done with their trip, they are allowed to park the device on the sidewalk. These services increase mobility options for short-term distances, decrease reliance on single occupancy vehicles, and help cities meet greenhouse gas emission reduction goals by getting people out of their cars. Many jurisdictions have adopted regulations to authorize shared mobility services in their jurisdictions. Since 2016, the city has piloted bike share with 2 different operators through individual agreements. First with Bay Bikes in 2016 through 2018, and most recently with Lime from May 2018 until February of this year. To date, the city has not allowed e-scooter operations due to safety concerns and operational challenges with the e-scooter devices. At the November 14th, 2018 Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission meeting, staff recommended that the city adopt an emergency ordinance to temporarily prohibit e-scooter operations. The commission agreed with staff's recommendation, and the city council adopted the emergency ordinance that same month. In February of 2019, the emergency ordinance was set to expire, so it was reenacted for an additional 90 days to allow staff more time to study the topic. The emergency ordinance expired yesterday. We are here today to propose a shared mobility permit program to regulate these programs for the city moving forward. In order to evaluate the potential of shared mobility programs in San Mateo, staff analyzed data from previous bike share pilot programs, conducted an online survey to assess community perception of shared mobility in the community. We also did an extensive review of shared mobility in other cities, and then took a deep dive into NACDO's guidelines for regulations and management of shared active transportation. And NACDO stands for the National Association of City Transportation Officials. So first, starting with the city's bike share pilot programs, the city first launched Bay Bikes with a company called Social Bicycles in May 2016. We had a total of 50 standard pedal bikes, and this program required bikes to be locked to bike racks and specified hubs where they were located. At that time, the city had purchased the bikes and paid for an operations contract during that pilot. However, in 2018, dockless bike share companies grew in popularity and began offering their services to cities at no charge. Dockless meaning the bikes can lock to themselves and do not have to be parked at specified locations. So in May 2018, the city terminated its contract with Social Bicycles and launched a pilot program with Lime with 275 pedal and e-bikes, or electric assist bikes. Overall, Lime was largely more successful than the Bay Bikes program, and ridership grew tremendously. Using NACDO's intensity metric of rides per bike per day, we saw that ridership was roughly one ride per bike per day compared to the 0.26 rides per bike per day for the Bay Bikes program. The increased ridership is likely due to a couple of factors. One, Lime operated a much larger fleet, and the bikes were dockless and no longer had to be docked at specific hubs. Lime also operated in neighboring cities, in Foster City and Burlingame, allowing for a regional network. And then finally, the e-bikes were also a new product in San Mateo. And actually, e-bikes saw twice as many trips than the standard pedal bikes during that pilot program. Using the city's Speak Up San Mateo platform, the city created an online survey to assess community perception of both bike share and e-scooter programs. The online survey was open for 3 weeks in January through February and received 746 responses. This is a pretty outstanding response rate for our online surveys and the most the city had received yet. I'm going to highlight a few findings from our survey on the next few slides, but attachment 4 contains a whole summary of the survey responses. So we asked, in general, how supportive are you of bike share in San Mateo? A significant portion, 78.4% of respondents, are very supportive or somewhat supportive of bike share. We also asked bike share users what type of trip would they have taken had a bike share bike not been available, to try to get a sense of the mode shift impact of the bike share bikes. Respondents said that the bike share trips replaced walking trips, Lyft and Uber trips, and personal car trips. We also asked survey respondents to identify their top priorities for a bike share permit program. They identified that bikes being parked responsibly, that the program is affordably priced, and a better distribution of bikes were all important factors in a bike share permit program. In regards to e-scooters, we asked, in general, would you be supportive of an e-scooter pilot program in San Mateo? We found that a slight majority, 57.5% of respondents, are somewhat or very supportive of an e-scooter pilot program. And then I think it's important to note that 9.2% were neutral on the topic. We asked them to identify the top concerns for a pilot program in San Mateo, and they identified that safety of pedestrians, the high number of injuries to users, the illegal use of e-scooters on sidewalks, and e-scooters blocking sidewalks as concerns for a pilot program with e-scooters. We also asked survey takers to identify the top benefits of a potential program, and people liked that it gives people a convenient option for short trips, replaces car trips, and it's a fun way to get around. In order to develop a recommended approach for San Mateo, we also looked at what other cities are doing and reviewed the industry best practices. So staff went through a benchmarking exercise and evaluated shared mobility programs in a number of cities. Key findings are provided as attachment 5, summarizing what cities are doing for bike share and e-scooter share. In general, what we found is that cities are requiring permits or licenses for operators in order to operate in the public right-of-way. We also found that cities tended to designate a maximum number of operators. We found that cities were allowing operators in the range from 1 to 4 operators. All of the programs that we looked at generally had 12-month permit terms. And then for bike share, cities unanimously preferred dockless operators for bike share. Finally, when it came to fees, some cities charged operators an annual fee, and others charged per device allowed to operate in that city. So we looked at NACDO's guidelines for regulations and management of shared active transportation, and this provided us a strong framework to work from because it included recommendations for what to include in your permit program, from rebalancing requirements to data sharing standards and more. And these guidelines are what help staff the development of the city's proposed regulations.
So now, based on the benchmarking data and the best practices from the industry, and in consultation with the city attorney's office, we have a proposed policy approach to regulate shared mobility services in the city of San Mateo moving forward. Under the proposed policy approach, the first step is to amend the municipal code to add Chapter 11.30 to make it unlawful to operate a shared mobility service in the public right-of-way in the city without a permit. And then secondly, to adopt a shared mobility permit program, and this would govern specific policy elements, including the provisions for recommended bike share permit program that we'll discuss with you this evening. As Andrea mentioned, to date, staff has piloted bike share previously through agreements with individual operators. And for the program moving forward, it's been recommended that we formalize these programs through regulations by doing the municipal code amendment and adopting the shared mobility program. The shared mobility permit program further would require the shared mobility operators to apply for a permit and to include responses to supplemental questions on the permit application to demonstrate how they plan to meet all of the requirements within the permit program. So speaking more about the proposed shared mobility permit rollout, that permit program that's included as attachment 2, I believe, as part of the resolution, includes operating requirements that must be met. This includes device requirements, what qualifies as a shared mobility device, parking requirements, operations, maintenance and rebalancing, requirements for community engagement and outreach, data sharing specifications, and requirements for personal data and privacy. Again, operators would have to submit a completed shared mobility permit application to be considered for operation in the city. All applications would be due on a specific date, and then staff will review and select an operator for a permit based on the evaluation criteria contained within the permit program. So our proposed shared mobility permit rollout, based on the city's evaluation of our previous bike share program data and the information that we found through the online survey, staff recommends that the city issue one permit for a bike share operator at this time. That would be for a fleet with a maximum number of 500 standard pedal bikes and electric bikes, so that would be a total of 500 bikes. The length of the permit term is recommended to be 12 months, and the operator would be required to renew the permit annually. We recommend a dockless approach for the bike share, and we're recommending a non-refundable permit application fee of $5,000 to partially offset staff time for the review and evaluation of the permits and implementation of the permit program. At this time, staff does not recommend the adoption of regulations to allow e-scooter programs to operate within the city's right-of-way. Staff will continue to evaluate local jurisdiction implementation and will assess feasibility for e-scooters in this program in the future. I'd like to note that the shared mobility permit program would be such that it could be amended administratively in the future, and we do welcome council feedback on this approach. We brought this proposed policy approach to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission on March 13th of this year. Overall, the commission supported the program framework and expressed very strong support for allowing e-scooter permits at this time. Public comment heard at the commission meeting also strongly supported initiating e-scooter share at this time. So in order to implement the shared mobility permit program, I mentioned a non-refundable application fee that would be required for each operator. To do so, we would need to amend the comprehensive fee schedule. So that's a proposed $5,000 application fee, non-refundable. Again, that's to partially offset program expenditures, including staff time for review and evaluation of applications and implementation of the program once it's approved. So included in tonight's item is a resolution to amend the adopted 2018 to 19 comprehensive fee schedule that is current through June 30th of this year, and then to amend the adopted 2019 to 2020 comprehensive fee schedule that takes effect starting July 1st. We have one additional administrative action this evening. As you know, and as Andrea mentioned, City Council previously enacted an emergency ordinance to temporarily prohibit commercial e-scooter operations in the city's public right-of-way. The temporary prohibition ended on May 5th, which was yesterday. The proposed shared mobility ordinance in front of you tonight, which renders it unlawful to operate devices in the public right-of-way without a permit, would not take effect until 30 days after adoption. And the 30 days begins when adopted after a second reading. So there is a gap between now or yesterday when the prohibition ended and when the proposed shared mobility ordinance would go into effect if adopted. So to regulate e-scooter operations in the interim, staff recommends reenacting the emergency ordinance to temporarily prohibit commercial e-scooter operations until the shared mobility regulations are in place. So you may have noted that we have a very lengthy staff recommendation this evening. First is to introduce an ordinance to amend the municipal code to make it unlawful to operate a shared mobility service in the city without a permit. Secondly, to adopt a resolution to adopt the Shared Mobility Permit Program and amend the adopted 2018 to 2019 and 2019 to 2020 comprehensive fee schedules for the Shared Mobility Permit application fee. And finally, to adopt an emergency ordinance that reenacts the temporary prohibition of the commercial operation of electric scooter businesses until shared mobility regulations are in place. And we would also welcome council feedback on the recommended approach for the initial permit rollout, including the number of permits that we would issue and including no issuance of permits to e-scooter operators at this time. So with that, we want to thank you for having us this evening, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great, thank you. Okay, questions?
How many operators are you suggesting we limit it to? 2, 3?
We're recommending issuing one permit, which would be for one operator.
Okay, so is that written into the current?
Yes.
It's written in there?
Yes.
Would this require 3 separate motions, or we can do this in one motion?
If you want to just move staff's recommendation,
That works?
modification.
Perfect. Okay, those are my questions.
Yes. Regarding our liabilities in this, and one of the reasons why staff is recommending that to wait on the e-scooters is liability to injury and our city's liability. Can you explain a little bit more like what our city's liability actually is, and especially as it relates, like, is there a difference between with bikes and scooters? And I read in the staff report that there was one incident already, and we don't even really have scooters. So I'm curious what your take is on that, the legal take.
So I think that understanding the immunities in California, that the act of regulating and issuing permits, we would most likely be immune from any kind of liability for any accidents that might occur if someone did get a permit and then go into business and someone's injured on the equipment. Most likely the party liable would be the owner if there was a problem with the equipment. Having said that, that doesn't mean we wouldn't be sued, and certainly that there's always a possibility that someone who would be injured making use of one of these permitted facilities would look to the city to recover. I just think that we would not be liable under immunities as is probably the answer. But there is that possibility of lawsuit. But merely the act of regulating and issuing permits, there are immunities in California law that would protect the city from liability in those circumstances.
And there's no difference between scooters and
right.
Okay. And then a question for staff. I would like to know, to what extent did the results of the online survey influence your recommendation?
I think it was one factor in considering and creating these proposed regulations, but we really took everything into account, from the survey to the analysis of the previous bike share program, and again, looking at what other cities around the region are doing to address both scooters and bike share in their community.
Okay. With the surveys, am I understanding it correctly? Like there is no way to verify that if somebody voted multiple times? Is there any way to do that?
So we did reach out to the online platform to understand how difficult it would be to enter multiple entries. And it would be very difficult to essentially provide multiple survey responses.
And is there any way to determine whether or not for sure they live in San Mateo?
So we did look at the number of survey respondents that were registered with the platform. So the only way that we know if someone lives in San Mateo is if they volunteer that information. And so we do have an ability to see what users are registered. And there were, I can look and get back to you on the exact number. But the results were really similar when you filtered down to look at the ones who had registered with San Mateo. Those results aligned with the majority.
The ones that say that they live in San Mateo, are we able to confirm that? Or can anybody just say they live in San Mateo?
The information is volunteered when you register.
Okay. And last question is, I guess, for legal. In terms of helmets and being able to, well, not only helmets, but also just making sure that the riders of the scooters and riders of the bikes are riding lawfully. Is that is that just an enforcement issue that we'd have to deal with and cite people or figure out how to do? Or are there some limitations that, especially with the helmets, I've read that there's some limitations on that?
Gabrielle, do you? Gabrielle Whelan, Assistant City Attorney, worked on the drafting of the ordinance with the staff and might have more information on that. To the extent that there is a vehicle code provision requiring, or some other code provision requiring helmets, it would be an enforcement issue for the police department to deal with if they saw someone without it. Gabrielle, you can come up here if you want.
That's okay. So there was a recent amendment to the vehicle code, and I just can't remember if it was to get rid of the helmet requirement or to add a helmet requirement. And so I'll have to, it switches back and forth. And so I'd have to research that and get back to the council.
The report said get rid of.
There's a helmet.
It's to get rid of.
So the most recent amendment to the vehicle code was to eliminate the requirement for helmets.
For e-scooters.
For e-scooters. For now.
All right. I don't understand that, but that's all the questions.
I just have one quick question on the liability. It is that whomever we select would be required to execute an indemnity agreement to indemnify the city for any either lawsuit and or losses, correct?
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure that was in there. And I just got one more. Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, indemnity is included in the permit conditions.
Great. And of course, that's only as good as their deep pocket, but nonetheless, we'll take it. The other thing so it is that there's the flexibility to not, if we adopt this, that it would, if we took on e-scooters at a later date, you would not have to amend an existing ordinance, correct? Okay.
Correct. That's
All
correct.
right. So it is that we're going to, what you're suggesting is, let's do some further study on the e-scooters, bring it back to council, evaluate it at a later date. If we recommend allowing a permit for e-scooters, we can do that without amending the code, should we enact a code this evening, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure I have those two things clear. Okay.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Frisket.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. I know one of the issues we had with the Lime bikes was people, just dropping them in the shrubs, leaving them in the middle of the sidewalks. We did get complaints from residents about that. Just driving around the city, I would see that taking place. And so I know in the proposed resolution, it talks about shared mobility device parking and where they, how they can impede regular flow of traffic in the public right-of-way or sidewalks. So what is our plan for enforcing that?
We've also included provisions for parking in the proposed ordinance that would amend the Muni Code. So a violation of the parking requirements would be a code violation, and we could proceed with enforcing code violation if they do so.
So who would that violation be, against the rider, or would it be the company? I mean, how do you enforce that? If someone's riding the bike and they just drop it in someone's front lawn.
It could be against the rider if they were the one that parked it in a manner that was against the code. If the vendor drops off a vehicle in a way and essentially parks it in a way that is against the regulations in the code, then we could enforce a code violation against the vendor. So the circumstance would depend.
So if a resident calls and says there's a bike that was just dropped on my front lawn, is the company required to go and pick it up?
We do have rebalancing requirements, and they differ based on if the location is a high-use area like a downtown or a residential area, and if they receive a complaint, there is a time frame in which they need to remedy the situation.
Okay. The other question was simply about doing the emergency ordinance, because I know another 3 months from now puts it where at the end of summer, and then we might have to do it again.
So our recommended approach is that the emergency ordinance would be in place until shared mobility regulations go into place. But the shared mobility regulations make it unlawful for any shared mobility type operator to operate without a permit. So in a sense, our regulations as proposed would not allow anyone without a permit to operate. So we plan on our proposed regulations state 1 bike share permit would be awarded and no e-scooter permits at this time. Does that make sense? So
it's not like a 90-day ordinance. The emergency ordinance would just stay in effect until we get all the regulations in place for e-scooters.
Exactly. So these shared mobility regulations are intended to affect both bike share and e-scooters.
Okay. And I might have missed it in looking through the ordinance. What is the time frame we're saying for rebalancing?
Operator shall respond to user complaints within 24 hours of receiving the complaint, and operator must rebalance residential areas and high-use areas twice daily. In all areas except for those, the operator must rebalance devices that are parked in one location for more than 72 hours or 3 days at a time.
And where's that in the ordinance? Can you just direct me to that?
It is in section 4, maintenance and rebalancing. It's part of the shared mobility permit program, which is attached to the resolution.
Attachment number 2.
It's the attachment 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically 72 hours a bike could be sitting before the company would have to pick it up.
Correct. If there's a complaint about it, they have 24 hours.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Do we have any speaker slips? Madam Clerk?
I do not have any speaker slips on this item.
Okay. Then we'll bring it back to council. Anyone want to go first? Comments? Did you want to entertain a motion? Or do you want some comments?
I have some comments.
Okay, please, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I support staff's thinking on this and the framework that they're proposing. I think the recommendation has the right amount of caution. Regarding the e-scooters, I agree with the approach, putting the pedestrian safety, scooter rider safety, and liability concerns at the forefront. But I do think that the fact that staff and many of the speakers at the Sustainability Infrastructure Commission had all these concerns shows how important it is that we get our bike master plan up and running and get the infrastructure that our city needs to make it so it's not such a liability concern, so we can use these alternative forms of transportation safely. And then I also just want to say, you know, there is a line in the staff report. This is completely different, but it says, quote, "The online survey demonstrates that there is significant support and interest for bike share to continue in the community." And you know, whenever I see something like that, I just wince, because when our city relies, and when our city staff is putting evidence in front before this council, and I may be the only one on this council that has this concern, but when we see this as evidence, when we really have a survey that's not put together by a statistician, but it's just put together by city staff, and it's put on there, and anybody in the entire Bay Area or entire state of California can get in there and just vote any way they want. I think we really need to use a lot of caution when we use that as evidence. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay. Did you have comments, Maureen?
Yep. I would agree with the staff recommendation. I'm not quite ready yet to approve electric scooters. I think it needs more research, more examination of best practices that cities are doing, because I think there are some significant health risks that we've seen. I've done some of my own research, and what I read is just the uptick in hospital emergency room visits, and the fact that they don't have to wear helmets, and I just think there needs to be more examination. And while I recognize the importance of first and last mile solutions, I favor the bicycles. I think that's great. I just am happy to support giving some more time to scooters and really taking a closer look at what's happening in other communities. So that's where I am with that. And I would also just echo what Councilman Rodriguez said about surveys. I think when they're not controlled, it's easy for results to get skewed if we don't know where the input is coming from. So I think they have a value, but I think the points he made were very valid as well. So.
That's what we work with. We work with imperfect stuff all the time, and I take your point. I think it's a good point. We love making decisions based on the best possible data, very big numbers, statistically significant, but we very often have flawed data, and it's the weight of it is related very much to how clear it was and how many responses there were. I'm ready to make a motion, but I'll let the mayor make comments.
I think in this instance, I appreciate the caution. In this instance, thank goodness there's enough concern about safety that I'm comfortable making the decision in this instance, but I do appreciate the caution as it relates to perhaps stalking a survey. Stalking, S-T-O-C-K-I-N-G. Stalking. I'm comfortable with not proceeding with them.
The recommendation.
So at this moment in time, I appreciate the flexibility going into the ordinance so that we can in the future evaluate it, because as you say, first and last mile is very important. Let's ease into it.
I move approval of all three elements of the recommendation of staff.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. That passes unanimously 4-0 this evening. Thank you so much, staff, for all your help.
Water? Do you got water? Deputy Mayor, get water.
With that, we will move on to the next item, which is item 22. The clerk might want to read that item, and then we will go from there and get the parties in place that are going to make some presentations on this item.
Madam Mayor, before we have the presentations, I will be recusing myself from this item because of the proximity of my home to the site.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 22 is 2230 Ensenada Way, single-family dwelling design review, appeal of Planning Commission decision. So noted that the city attorney has recused himself.
We'll let him leave the room, and we will begin. Who's going to open up? Go forward.
Okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Rendell Bustos, Associate Planner. and staff planner for the project before you this evening, which is a public hearing for an appeal of a planning commission decision to approve a planning application located at 2230 Ensenada Way. The subject planning application is for a single family dwelling design review for a 422 square foot second story addition and a 140 square foot first floor addition to an existing split level single family residence. The project would add 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. The project retains the existing 1-car garage, as well as the existing traditional architectural style. 2230 Ensenada Way is zoned R1B for 1-family dwellings and is located south of Alameda de las Pulgas, east of Highway 92, and about 1 mile south of City Hall. The residence is located on a slope as depicted with the red arrow. As this image shows, the subject residence in the center of the image sits between 2 larger single-family residences with more prominent 2-story masses. The applicant, also the property owner, filed the subject planning application in August of 2016. His uphill neighbor, the appellant, located at 2224 Ensenada Way, submitted comments at the beginning of the application process that the proposed second-story addition would result in impacts to his southeast-facing views. So these are images photographed from the appellant's residence, which show the appellant's southeast-facing views, the left from his dining room, and on the right, his kitchen. So given the comments from his neighbor, the applicant redesigned the addition to minimize view impacts. The applicant also voluntarily had story poles installed and submitted the plans to the city's independent design review consultant for further analysis of the project's design. Staff ultimately found that the project conformed to the required zoning code standards and the single-family dwelling design guidelines and approved the project at the staff level in November of 2018. The uphill neighbor then appealed the project to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission approved the project and upheld the zoning administrator's approval with a vote of 5-0 in February of 2019, but was appealed by the uphill neighbor, citing the same concerns for view impacts. It should be noted that the city does not have an ordinance in place for view protection or view preservation. The city's single-family dwelling design guidelines, however, do outline guidelines for second-story additions and their potential impact to established views from common living areas such as kitchens and dining rooms. The guidelines suggest that floor plan configuration, second-story step backs, lower roof plates, and minimized roof mass can mitigate view impacts. The guidelines also encourage maintaining views similar to those enjoyed by the proposed addition. The guidelines, however, do not prohibit view impacts, nor do they provide methods for quantifying view impacts. To further the analysis of the project's conformance to the design guidelines, the project was reviewed by the city's design review consultant, Larry Cannon of Cannon Design Group. All design review letters concluded with no recommendations for changes to the project design. With respect to the guidelines, Larry Cannon mentions having no feasible recommendation for reorienting or reconfiguring the addition. Larry Cannon also acknowledges that while a flat roof may preserve the existing views, a flat roof would not be compatible with the existing residents or with the neighborhood. This would also be in conflict with other guidelines for architectural and roof design compatibility. Lastly, Larry Cannon notes that the proposed addition does not result in any southeast-facing views at the expense of the appellant's view. So as previously mentioned, the applicant voluntarily had story poles installed in March of 2018. The story poles do show an impact to the appellant's views, but also show that a substantial portion of the appellant's view are preserved as shown in these photographs. So to conclude, I'll be showing a series of slides that will show in order all of the redesigns the applicant incorporated to mitigate the view impacts. So this is the front elevation in August of 2016, where the total building height in this plan was 27 feet 2 inches, and it also had a gabled roof design. It was then redesigned, which this elevation shows an early redesign in September of 2016, which resulted in a total reduction of 1 foot and a reconfiguration from a gabled roof design to a hipped roof design, which reduced the apparent roof mass. The applicant again redesigned the addition and reduced the height by another foot by reducing the second floor ceiling height. And this elevation shows the final design with a reduction of another 6 inches by reducing the roof slope. Thus, from the initial design to the current design, the applicant reduced the overall building height by a total of 2.5 feet, from 27 feet 2 inches to 24 feet 8 inches. And to conclude, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt a resolution to deny the appeal and uphold the zoning administrator and planning commission decisions approving a single-family dwelling design review plan application located at 2230 Ensenada Way. So this concludes staff's presentation. I'm available and happy to answer any questions that the council may have. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the council? Deputy Mayor Prescott?
Just had one, and I had read this originally on my iPad, and this one disappeared, so my notes are there. But I wanted to ask, I remember reading, I think, that the view of the cityscape and out towards the bay was not interrupted by this addition. Is that correct? It's just kind of out to the southeast only? So, I mean, I'm trying to get an assessment of how much view is impacted, and it's from 2 windows, and it's not significant, if I'm correct in...
Yeah, one of the challenges is that the design guidelines don't provide any way to measure the amount of blockage, but as seen from these images, there is still a prominent view from the appellant's residence of distant views to the bay, which are sort of northeast, but then is visible from this image. There is a result of view impact caused by the addition, facing southeast about, this upper portion.
So that picture up in the top right, is that out of their dining room window, or is that out of the living room?
That's out of the dining room.
Oh, okay. And what about the living room view? Is that just straight out towards?
Yeah, I don't have an image of that. Perhaps the appellant may have one in his presentation, but I would assume that it would be the distant views facing north.
Okay. That was my only question.
Any other questions? Okay, are we going to have the appellant have an opportunity to speak? Are they here? Do they want to speak?
The applicant will do a presentation followed by the appellant.
Okay, so let's start with the applicant. Come on down. Welcome.
All right, Student Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about our project. So just a little bit about the project, why the project. We bought our home. My wife and I bought the home in 2009. Born and raised in the city. I've been working at PG. This is my 18th year. My wife is a teacher in the city, teaching 6th grade on her 16th year. We got married in 2005, and we bought our home in San Mateo in 2009. We chose San Mateo for many reasons. Location was definitely one of them, central to our work in the city as well as with our family. And so we're actually really, really fortunate to be in a neighborhood with great neighbors. And since moving there, our family has grown. So we have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old. Part of the reason why we're doing the project in the first place. Our son attends Meadow Heights down the street. And actually 2 of his classmates are our neighbors, so it's kind of cool. And our daughter goes to a preschool on Alameda, so not too far away from us as well. We enjoy what San Mateo has to offer, right? Birdsford Park down the street. On warmer days, we'll walk to 25th, and enjoy dinner or the local shops there or the farmers market on when they have it there as well. Funny thing is that some of the dads and I are actually going to put in a rec league basketball team together. So that's some of the community that we've kind of built already with 3 of the dads in the neighborhood. So with that, in 2016, we decided that it's probably best for us to expand our home, right? It's a 2-bedroom home with 4 people, 1 bathroom. You can imagine what goes on in there. And more importantly for us, we didn't want to move because we love the community and the neighborhood. So sort of why are we here? Just giving some context. I'll kind of run through this quickly, hopefully. In 2016, again, our kids are growing, and just our house is, it's not the biggest house, but we love it and we love where we are. And we decided the best thing to do for us is to make modifications. Our modifications are actually pretty modest. It's not too crazy. And so we developed our designs. We submitted to the city. We went through the planning process, stayed with it. We received feedback from our neighbor, Dan, who gave us some feedback on his views and his privacies, and we took that with us as we went along this process. And pretty much after 2 years or a little bit more than 2 years of trying to get to a compromise, we got our final designs in. They got approved by the plan department, and then it got appealed again, and they went to the commission, and it got unanimously approved, and we're here again. So how do we get here? A little bit about, just want to give a quick perspective from our journey here. So in 2016, again, we went through the process, and I think the biggest thing as we took our neighbors' input on this was trying to take 3 things into consideration to our designs, right? One is definitely the San Mateo design guidelines, applying that, as well as our neighbor's desires to kind of preserve his view and his privacy, as well as our own desires of trying to build a home for ourselves. And that's kind of how we started this whole process. So these are similar views that were taken the day we were able to kind of take a look at the story poles. You can see there is some blockage, but again, it's to the south, and I think the bay, when the bay views weren't impacted there. But we took the ask to do story poles into consideration, knowing that we didn't have to do it, but we just did it anyways, in the spirit of neighbors. And here's sort of the external look from the story poles as well. And I think, even though the story poles weren't super accurate, they kind of gave us an idea of what we needed to do in terms of our design changes. This was actually our third set of design changes. And again, I think we tried our best to really empathize with our neighbor, considering the views that we were impacting. He still has views of the bay from the front window, his living room window, as well as his dining room. And so I think other things that I wanted to bring up, but I'll just pass on that for right now. But I think one thing I did wanted to kind of emphasize as part of our journey was we tried our best to really embody the spirit of community through this whole process. We could have really, done things that we shouldn't have done, right? But I think we just really tried our best to embody what we felt San Mateo was about. And so, sorry, I'm nervous. So during 2017 and 18, there were crazy winds and his fence fell over, right? And, we offered to help both financially and everything else. We could have just been bad neighbors and be do whatever. But I think, for the interest of us living together and actually being on the same block for a really long time, probably didn't make the most sense. And I think that's an example of how we were able to kind of embody the spirit of community there. And throughout the 2 years, as we mentioned, we tried to move along with the process. And one thing that was pretty common was, every time we tried to make an action, there was some sense of delay, whether it was scheduling a meeting or trying to get things done. For instance, like story pole construction, like we had to reschedule it a couple of times just to make sure it was okay to build it up. Feedback was also delayed a couple of times, and it just kind of lengthened this process to almost 3 years now. And so it got to a point where we're just like, okay, we have to kind of get to a point of decision, right? And we decided to come up with our final design, and we submitted to planning department to get approved, and we felt like we did our best to compromise city guidelines, our design, and what our neighbor Dan wanted. So why we feel like our final design should be approved and kind of moving forward so we can start hopefully building soon. I think we've considered a lot of things. One story I tell a lot of our friends is that everywhere we go for the past 2 to 3 years, we actually, whether it's an Airbnb or a hotel or a friend's house, we kind of take a look at the surroundings, because if we decided to have our house designed a certain way, this would how it would be, right? So for 3 years, traveling or going to a friend's house, that's sort of the impression, because we wanted to empathize with not just what our neighbor wanted, but what we would end up living in, right, and calling home. And so we did a lot of that as well. And I think just reflecting back on everything, we reduced about 30 inches overall to the overall height from the first time back in 2016, and we reduced the pitch to preserve views. We removed windows to kind of, just go through and preserve his privacy. And most important, for at least another thing for us, is we wanted to keep the integrity of the home and the neighborhood design, just the overall look and feel. And then I think another reason why we feel like, hopefully this sort of plan goes through, the Plan Commission also gave their unanimous support at the previous appeal as well. And the last thing is just opportunity. It's been 2 years. Our kids have actually grown older since then. And unfortunately or fortunately, putting 2 kids in a bunk bed, a boy and a girl, they kind of have to start separating a little bit. And so the opportunity, at least for us, is now. And it's been, we feel like it's been a long time coming to kind of get there. And lastly, we love our location. We love our neighbors and this community. And we just hope we can move forward with this design.
And we will now hear from the appellant.
Hi, my name is Daniel O'Connell, and is my consulting architect, and the two of us will make the presentation. Together we shall I'm getting a little feedback. Is that all right? Oh, I can live with it, yeah. Feedback from someplace, yeah. Together we're going to articulate our appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to uphold the zoning administrator's decision to approve the planning application, PA 2016-073, for a second floor addition to the Wong residence at 2230 Ensenada Way. I reside at the house located at 2224 Ensenada Way, which makes me the uphill next door neighbor of the Wong family. My parents purchased the house brand new, and the O'Connell family moved into it as its first occupants in January 1953. A little over 66 years ago now. With the exception of living away from home while in college, I have continuously lived in this house and have considered it my home for over 6 decades. It is a hillside house. Of the 7 houses that you pass while proceeding uphill to the crest of the hill on the even side of the street from Alta Avenue at its base, this house has the distinction of being the only one with a dining room window and a kitchen window on its downhill side. Each of the other houses has a bedroom and bathroom windows on the downhill side. And it is on the downhill side that the beautiful southeast views of the valley below and the hills in the distance are to be enjoyed. Under a document entitled the Single Family Dwelling Design Guidelines, which form part of the city's zoning code, kitchens and dining rooms and living rooms, but not bedrooms and bathrooms, are considered primary living spaces, and as such, the views from their windows are afforded special consideration, which is to say, the construction of any second-floor addition must respect those views, which, simply put, means, among other things, the resulting second-floor addition must minimize, within the constraints of other provisions of the guidelines, any view intrusion that may result from its construction. It's the project's failure, in our opinion, to adequately minimize the second-floor addition's view intrusion that is the engine driving this appeal. Thank you. Jack?
Thank you. Okay. What I have up on the screen right now is a diagram that shows the view obstruction that is really hard to measure, actually, but generally speaking, it's about 2/3 of the view from those windows. Many neighbors have provided their written support of the applicant's desire to add a second floor to their home, and honestly, Daniel wants to see them get their second floor too. I mean, I think that they really need it. They have a growing family, and Daniel doesn't want to be in their way in this respect. And that view at the same time is important to him. It's been observed that he has a view through his living room window, and that's true. But he has views from other significant rooms that matter also, and that's why we're here. There's really no way that they can add a floor to their house without impacting Daniel's view, as noted by Larry Cannon, the city's design consultant. Daniel's prepared to compromise the amount of view he will lose, recognizing that no second floor is possible without loss of view. We did a very basic two-dimensional analysis of the amount of view that would be lost, and it's fairly significant. Just to go, there's the view right now, and that's out of the kitchen window. You can see hills to the southeast over the ridge of the house that's 2 doors down, actually, and then trees on either side. And that's through the dining room window. The design guidelines state the established views from a primary living area such as Daniel's dining room and kitchen should be respected. These guidelines state, quote, minimize view blockage, unquote, as well as, quote, choose roof forms that minimize mass, unquote. The dictionary defines minimize as reduce something, especially something unwanted or unpleasant, to the smallest possible amount or degree. In his report to the city, Mr. Cannon came to the conclusion that the proposed second floor addition does not result in any southeast facing views, and thus does not, and since they're not gaining any view, the Longs are not gaining any view to the southeast, that means that in fact they're not gaining one at the expense of Mr. O'Connell. That argument is a little odd to me, because certainly they could have windows facing that direction. They chose not to, and the logic seems to be, since they didn't choose to take advantage of those views, they're not taking advantage of Daniel. This doesn't make any sense to me. You will note that there's been, I want to show, so there's the story poles, and by the way, I thought the Wongs were really very good neighbors to pay for that to happen, and it was very helpful to everyone to be able to see just what the effect was. It's a little hard to see in these slides, but the next slide gives you a more dramatic sense about it. You will note there's been considerable correspondence about finding a design solution that niche neighbor could accept. I believe it was in good faith by each party. We met with Newton Wong, Rendell Bustos from staff, and Darcy Forsell, the zoning administrator, at the site to review the story polls and really see what was the effect. At that time, I suggested to Daniel that if the height of the proposed new roof was lowered 50% from between the top of the ridge to the plate line, that would there's about a 41 inch difference, and if it was around 21 inches, essentially cutting it in half, would he accept that as a reduction in height? He agreed, and we communicated that with Mr. Wong. On May the 29th, 2018, I received a drawing from Mr. Wong, which is this slide. And it suggests that he might change the roof slope from 5 and 12 to 2 and 12. We thought, wow, that's a lot of progress. That sounds really good. However, at the same time, he was raising the plate height by 9 inches. We were willing to accept the 2 and 12 without the raise in the plate height. However, the Wongs decided not to proceed with that solution and instead proceeded to reduce the slope to 4 and 12. A 2 and 12 roof slope combined with raising the plate 9 inches would reduce the ridge height by 15.75 inches. The revised slope of 4 and 12 reduces the height of the ridge by about 8.4 inches, which is actually more than the staff report says. I think it's like 6 inches, you were saying. 8.4 inches is just not enough to make a difference in this issue. Keep in mind that what we're referring to is the story pole layout, not what was submitted to the city in 2016. And I appreciate the staff report today because, frankly, I was confused about how did you reduce the height by 2 feet 6 inches when, in fact, what I see is the plate height was reduced from 9 feet to 8 feet, and then the roof slope was changed from 5 to 12 to 4 and 12, which really only works out if you compute it out to be much less. It's around, let's see, it was 1 foot, it's 20 inches altogether from the beginning. But what explains it is that they changed the design, that it had a gable roof in the first design, which frankly wasn't consistent with the rest of the house. The rest of the house had a hip roof. So that should have been done anyway. But that had the effect of lowering the overall height. And it was also stated in the report that Mr. Cannon did not recommend any changes to the design. That's really not true. His first report suggested that they had a 9-foot plate and it'd be reduced to 8 feet, and that's in the September 14th, 2017 report. He acknowledged that. We note there is a concern about neighborhood context. And I want to show just a few slides here of the neighborhood context. So that's Mr. O'Connell's house. There's a lot of different roof forms: flat roofs, sloping roofs, high-pitch roofs, low-pitch roofs. This is all pretty much on the same block. That's on an adjacent street. That's a low-slope roof, by the way. It's around, I would say, 3 and 12. So we respectfully request that you deny this project without prejudice, so that a revision to the design incorporating a roof slope of 2 and 12 for example, while maintaining a plate height of 8 feet can be incorporated. I just also want to state that in the zoning code, section 27.08.032D under single-family dwelling design review sets the following requirements. Approval or denial. In making its review, the planning division staff, the zoning administrator, the plan commission, or city council, as the case may be, shall be guided by the adopted R1 single-family dwelling design guidelines. The SFDDR application shall be approved if the decision maker makes all the following findings. 1, the structures, site plan, and landscaping are consistent with the adopted R1 single-family dwelling design guidelines. We just, at this point, we submit that it doesn't, and that it doesn't really respect adequately the views from Mr. O'Connell's house. Thanks again for your patience. We would like the opportunity to respond to comments from the public or clarifications of issues that may arise, and we're available for questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No questions.
No, not really, not at the moment.
We can open it up for public comment, I'm assuming?
I did not have any speaker slips on this.
Okay. Then that makes it easy. You come back to council. Okay, Councilmember Rodriguez, you look like you have something to say.
I have some notes. You know, I just want to tell the not the applicant that I really appreciate their spirit and attitude going through this, because I don't think I would have been as compromising or as in good spirits. I mean, story polls, 3 redesigns, consultants, and the delays, those are significant additional costs, and I feel like you were embodying the San Mateo spirit of compromise, and you might have compromised more than you could have, in my opinion. So as far as I know, that when the appellant's parents bought the house, they did not buy an easement on the downhill property, saying that they could never add a second story. So this might be one of the easiest votes I have to make. So I'm going to support the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal.
Okay. Anyone else?
Sure. I appreciate how much both parties love the neighborhood. I think you both want to be there for a very long time. I sincerely hope that you both want to get along, whatever decision we make tonight. I appreciate the steps that were taken. Obviously, young families moving to San Mateo, you're really the heart of the community, and taking on everything that you've taken on is what we want to see. I think you love San Mateo, you chose to be here, and I know that you're choosing to stay here, Mr. O'Connell, so you also love it enough to stay, and I think that that should be valued. We need to come together as a community, and one of the things that we're seeing is that in order for people to stay, they have to go up. You know how hard it would be to sell your house and try to move somewhere else. I think that's the same situation many people face, and so adding on is the only option for growing families, and we see that across San Mateo. And holding on to great families who make San Mateo what it is part of what we need to do. So I appreciate that this is going to affect you. I know that. And it won't be the same view. You won't get to stare at your neighbor 2 houses down's roof anymore. But we appreciate you being here too. And staying is a nice thing. But please support your neighbors and their growing family. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, this is a difficult one because you never want to see somebody lose a view. But that said, I don't think, we don't have any provisions that say that views cannot be lost. I think we talk about respecting views. And from what I can see, and I read all of the packet today, and I went through all the emails, it seems to me that the applicants have really tried to be good neighbors and to meet the concerns of Mr. O'Connell. Going through several design changes, I think they've tried to be respectful that you not lose those views. I'm not sure that even reducing the roof line further, which I think they've already done quite a bit, would not somehow impede those views. And, and I'm not diminishing the view. I think it's a nice view of the hills, but if this were like $1 million panoramic view, I think it'd be a different conversation that you're taking away something really magnificent. And, I'm happy you still have some view from your living room, but to me, to be able to, after 3 years, put closure on this, I think I was really impressed that the applicant really did make really good efforts from what I could see and what I read to accommodate the concerns with respect to Mr. O'Connell's views. So from that perspective, I am inclined to support the recommendation of the staff and the Planning Commission to approve the project.
Okay. I'm headed that way as well. Mr. O'Connell, I wish your neighbors weren't adding on to their house. Mr. Wong, I'm glad you're adding on to your house. And I'm glad that it will be the home that your family needs for its needs. So it's a terrible situation to be in for both of you, and it's very uncomfortable. I get it. By the same token, life is about compromise. Oftentimes we don't see it. I'm very pleased that you made an effort to do it. It's not enough for Mr. O'Connell, but I think we really have to look at 1, 2, 3 revisions 3 years later. I'm willing to approve the project as well. So with that, should we entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution to deny the appeal and uphold the zoning administrator and planning commission decisions approving a single-family dwelling design review planning application located at 2230 Ensenada Way.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
No opposition? Thank you so much. Good luck to both of you. Okay, with that, we will go on to the next item, which is under old business, the wastewater treatment plant.
Item 23, wastewater treatment plant nutrient removal and wet weather management upgrade and expansion project contract.
This is a biggie. I saw that price tag. So, Azalea, welcome.
Yeah.
Who's taking it away, Brad or Azalea? You gonna start?
Sharing it,
No,
right?
I'm going to
Sharing?
turn this over to Azalea, let her share the spotlight tonight.
All right, thank you, sir. The A team, the Azalea team, I like it.
Well, good night. Azalea Mitch, Deputy Public Works Director, and the item before you is the construction contract award for Phase 1 for the wastewater treatment expansion, upgrade and expansion project. I will quickly walk you through the overview of the project, the construction approach, and our recommendation. You all know this project rather well. The objectives are to replace the aging infrastructure and build a new facility to meet the regulatory compliance, which requires that we eliminate sanitary sewer overflows and also restricts us on the blending of flow at the treatment plant. The project will allow us to treat 78 million gallons a day during wet weather. It positions us as early actors on nutrient removal in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at the completion, we will be able to produce Title 22 effluent, which is recycled water. On average, the facility will be able to produce around 9 million gallons a day during dry weather flow. This project has been long in the making with the creation of the Clean Water Program back in 2014. And the team is here, the program advisor is here, so this is a rather happy moment for all of us. The actual design of the project began in December 2016. However, soon after that, we began to see increasingly challenging market conditions, which had a significant impact on the costs. During that time, there was a lot of value engineering being done, many workshops, and the design changed, which you approved just last month. Because of the project's complexity, it's a rather large expansion. And once again, the treatment plant has to be in service as the new facility should be in operation. A contractor management at risk approach was adopted. The selection process was rather intense. It was qualification based, and Sun Construction was selected in 2017. Having them on board during the design process has been extremely beneficial. We've been able to work with them, with the designers, and really assess constructability issues during the design process rather than after the fact during construction. This approach has been efficient. It actually has reduced the risk, the unknowns, and overall provides better pricing. The project will be delivered in 3 phases, known as guaranteed maximum price packages. And phase 1, GMP 1, which we call, is the preparation of the site. Phase 2 will be the foundation, which will return and ask for and recommend to award in November. And the final phase 3 will actually be building the facility itself, all the concrete. So another benefit of the CMAR approach is that we can begin construction while still in the design phase. So GMP1 is the design for the site preparation. Since that will begin later this month, once you award this project, we will continue to work on the design for phase 2 and 3. This approach allows us to stay on track and continue to meet some of the deadlines that we actually didn't meet in terms of the cease and desist order. Phase 1 includes demolition work. We will be demolishing filters and old digesters. The contractor will set up their trailers, and we will work on excavating and shoring and dewatering for the new facilities. The schedule is expected to expand from July 2019 to October 2020, so over a period of 1.5 years. So it's important to note that phase 1, while the contractor begins phase 1, midway, halfway through, they will also begin on phase 2, and this is following the November 29 recommendation once again for you to award GMP2. The same is expected halfway through phase 2. The contractor will begin phase 3. So we will be in construction beginning in the next few months for the next 5 years. The Clean Water Program has had a very extensive and comprehensive outreach and communication method. We've had many public meetings, one last week. There's a picture there of Derek talking to the community. The social media has been used. We have a hotline, and this hotline is in place right now. However, once we begin construction, all the calls will be routed to Sun Construction to answer any issues related to the construction-related activities. Back in June of 2018, the estimate for GMP1 was $42 million. After the value engineering and the redesign, this cost dropped to 34.2. The team did spend a number of weeks reviewing the cost estimate line by item, and we were able to reduce that cost even further to 33.1. We are recommending a contingency of 1.725 that would be controlled by the owner, by the city, for any unknowns related to conditions found during construction. The funding for this project is through the sewer rates. We have been through the process of issuing bonds, which are expected later this month. We also have an application for a $277 million loan through WIFIA, which is, the application is due this October. So at this time, I have to say I've been here 6 months. It's been a great ride, and it's very exciting to be here with the team to recommend award for GMP1 to Sun Construction. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Did we get our bond rating?
Yes, we did. We have a double A2 and a double A minus.
Okay.
So, which is a good rating.
And I think it said in the report, how much did we pay for that $8 million savings to go back and revalue it?
So we did. We paid the designer to redesign, and that was approximately $4 million. We did also pay Sun Construction for the additional services to help us through that process, and that's a contract that you did just approve under consent for $200,000.
So $4,200,000 to
Right,
save
and
$8
this
million?
is just the $8 million savings is just for GMP 1. We anticipate further savings, GMP 2 and GMP 3, and we're estimating $25 million overall.
Oh, that's right. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, other questions? Questions? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Any?
I do not have any speaker cards.
Okay, well, we'll bring it back to the council. Does anyone want to approve a contract for $33 million tonight? Just asking. Apparently, we've got some takers. Great. Do we have a motion?
A motion, yeah. I'll make a motion that we award a contract to Sun Construction Incorporated for services to construct the first package for the wastewater treatment plant, nutrient removal, and wet weather management upgrade, an expansion project for a guaranteed maximum price of $98,178, provide contingency amount of $1,725,000, and authorize the Public Works Director to execute the contract and change orders within the contingency amount in substantially the form presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes 4-0.
Thank you. Good night.
Very much. I was trying to see if I could vote on this new system, but it doesn't think it. Not yet.
The vote's not ready yet on there.
Okay, great. So let's move on to item 24.
Item 24 is the committee to house the Bay Area CASA Compact.
Okay, Mr. Munikawa, take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Ron Munikawa, Chief of Planning. And the item before you tonight is the CASA Compact. You'll see that's the title of this slide. The subheading is really addressing housing issues is the key, and we'll talk about that during this presentation. So CASA, the Committee to House the Bay Area, CASA, of course, being the Spanish word for house, do not attempt to make Committee to House the Bay Area fit the acronym CASA. I've tried it several times and it just doesn't work out that way. It has been created by MTC and ABAG in 2017. You do have a copy of the CASA Compact that's attached as an exhibit to the staff report that outlines the 18-member steering committee as well as a 32-member technical committee. A variety of individuals. I think one of the concerns that's been expressed is to what degree smaller and medium-sized cities were represented in this effort. So this is the CASA Compact. We'll briefly run through the very different elements, but I think one thing to emphasize is the 3 Ps as emphasized in the CASA Compact itself: production of housing, preserving existing affordable housing, and protecting vulnerable communities. This is just an outline from the staff report. Again, these are somewhat arbitrary classifications intended only to give some sort of form to the 10 various elements. I think what you'll see resonating through all 10 elements is both the fact that these are issues that have been discussed locally, as well as subjects that have been addressed by state legislation, both recently enacted as well as pending legislation, which the council is aware of. Again, these, well, the first ones were preserve and protect, talking about just cause eviction policies, rent control, housing production. I think these are very familiar themes that you've seen before. Lastly, the 2 CASA Compact elements talk about funding of CASA Compact, which is approximately estimated to be $2.5 billion a year, $1 billion from state and local, from state and federal funding, and 1.5 to be derived by a variety of regional and local resources. And then element 10, a regional housing enterprise that would allocate these funds and help coordinate housing issues in the Bay Area. Again, these are summarized in the staff report. Staff report also includes pending legislation related to these CASA compact elements. So what's the status right now? Interestingly enough, both the boards of MTC and ABAG have authorized their leaders to sign it. However, in signing it, they did not officially endorse any of the specific proposals. I think for both agencies, they were concerned about having an outreach to the locals. As the council is aware, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 meetings ago, you voted to have representatives from Burlingame and Brisbane to be a part of this local government official working group to influence ABAG and MTC with respect to upcoming state legislation. And so that, I think, is the primary focus of tonight. While it's called the CASA Compact, what we're really talking about are housing-related bills that are pending in the state legislature, because that's really the action item that occurs with respect to housing issues. What is or is not the CASA Compact? Well, we talked about the 10L. It does not have the force of law. So once it's been endorsed, once it's been adopted, it is not as though the state law, regional law, local law has changed. So when the sun came up the next morning, things were the same. However, it does represent that the region does see that there are housing issues that need to be addressed throughout the state. And really, again, it gets implemented by state legislation. Many of you are aware of changes in state law last year in terms of Housing Accountability Act, changes to ADU ordinances, those types of things. So that would be a continuation of that trend. So here's the state of California. Again, we're just emphasizing the amount of state and assembly bills and Senate bills that are coming forward. So these are some of the more significant ones. The reason I circled SB 50 is the council has sent in a letter. There are a whole host of pending state legislations from rent caps to SB 50 in terms of housing near transit, others related to ADUs, a whole host. I've heard estimates from anywhere from 80 to 200 bills currently moving through the legislature. So here's one simple way to look at it. There's a lot of different ordinances moving through. So if the council is interested in specific legislation, certainly we could go ahead and schedule an additional study session. But staff would not be prepared to have an in-depth discussion of these bills this evening. But again, it's just to indicate that the CASA Compact itself does not have the force of law, but it is consistent with a statewide effort to address housing issues that affect localities in the region. This is the state's view of the housing crisis. The only reason I put this in is it does give some guidance in terms of what the state is looking for. And they are talking about increasing production of new housing in California. And again, the state's viewpoint is that intent has not been fulfilled. And I don't think there's very many communities along the peninsula and the Bay Area who would not disagree that there is a need for housing in their communities. I do think, however, there are some outside factors that I think don't get affected by state legislation. These are past factors. For example, the Great Recession, housing wasn't being constructed. In fact, I think Councilmember Frescott was on the Planning Commission when we took a tour of Bay Meadows at that time. We primarily took a look at the community park and the infrastructure because nothing was being built. We did take a look at the stormwater drainage systems that were very green, but there was no actual construction that was happening. You've probably heard about all the rising construction costs, and who knows what's going to be happening in the future. Now that quote in the bottom right, to be quite honest, if you take a look on the internet, you can find 180-degree opposing views on anything, but that is to indicate that in terms of the economic forces that affect housing, it is at best uncertain for the future. So these are things that are outside local, state, and regional control. I think the council knows that one of the issues with statewide efforts is that they cover a variety of cities. Los Angeles, San Mateo, Loomis, California. The reason Loomis, California is on there is my uncle used to live there. This is Taylor Road. Once they put a stoplight on Taylor Road, he decided that the town of Loomis was no longer the town that he grew up in, so he moved to an unpaved road leading to his house in the unincorporated part of the county. So again, this is just to illustrate that there are a variety of cities, municipalities in California, and it is very difficult to provide state legislation that adequately addresses all of them. There is some movement on state legislation to take a look at some distinctions based on population, but that is certainly not ever present in terms of the state legislation pending. Again, just showing that there might be some movement to try and provide for the smaller, more rural communities. So again, tonight we talked about the CASA Compact, but that really shouldn't be the emphasis of the council. Instead, really what it should be would be the legislation that implements these housing issues. What we've provided are next steps. These are in the legislation, or excuse me, in the staff report. Again, you have 2 San Mateo County council members who are part of a legislative committee that will be discussing future state legislation with respect to housing. I know the council has had discussion with Jerry Hill and other state legislators regarding state legislation, engaging in positions regarding specific pieces of legislation. The staff is aware through the League of California Cities and other bulletins about pending legislation. And finally, to continue to address housing issues at the local level. The general plan, I think many of you were observing the Home for All convening that happened the other week, with the next one scheduled for Hillsdale High School. Those types of discussions, development proposals, Station Park Green, Bay Meadows, that demonstrate an awareness of the need for housing in the community, and other local efforts. Just recently, the council directed staff to simplify regulations for accessory dwelling units in order to facilitate their construction. So all of these things on the local level are available to the council to address housing issues. So again, that concludes the staff report. This is the same exact slide that we started out with, but you'll notice that the title and the subtitle have been reversed. In other words, addressing housing issues is really the key. The CASA Compact is, again, a regional response or emphasis on housing issues, but it does not have the force of law. That concludes the staff report, and we're available for any questions.
Just before it is that in the CASA Compact, there was no San Mateo County elected representation.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Oh, and I should add that this is an informational item, so we're not requesting any type of action on the part of the council this evening.
I just want to note one correction in your wonderful report. It was that the representatives from Burlingame and Brisbane that we voted on was voted on by the Council of Cities, not CCAG. And those 2 people, along with, I believe, Warren Slocum, still go to these MTC. They formed a subcommittee after passing CASA when there was objections to the level of input that was being provided. So I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't a CCAG thing, but a Council of Cities. Okay. Deputy Mayor Fresca, do you have questions or comments?
No questions, I have comments, but
okay.
Wait till after public.
Yeah, let me just see if I've got questions from the other council members. Any questions? Okay. Then we'll open it up to public comment, and then we'll bring it back to council and maybe come up with some direction. Okay. How many do we have?
We have 2.
Okay.
Lisa Diaz-Nash, our first speaker.
Okay. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Pappen and council members, for hanging in there as long as you have. My belief is that while the CASA Compact is a multifaceted effort to address the California housing crisis we all agree exists, it does not offer a fully faceted set of solutions. CASA does not take into sufficient consideration the major implication that CASA recommendations have on infrastructure, on schooling, on the environment, or which level of government should have the authority to craft solutions. And as Mayor Pappen just mentioned, it also did not include any San Mateo County representation. CASA has resulted in well over 100 new bills in being discussed currently in Sacramento. These bills, especially SB 50, offer a one-size-fits-all, top-down approach that strips local government of its fundamental authority to govern zoning. The latest Sacramento negotiations, which are changing every day, have reduced existing protections for affordable housing and multi-unit housing in what could be interpreted as prioritizing speed over building a sustainable solution that increases affordable housing for many. I do not believe that the complexity of the housing crisis can be solved in one legislative session in Sacramento, just as I don't believe that we can have a thorough discussion of CASA as point number 24 in a 25-point agenda. And we all need to solve this problem. While CASA is on the topic for our agenda tonight, the San Mateo City Council needs to be focused on proactively working with other peninsula cities to lobby in a united fashion for sustainable solutions that work for peninsula cities and all the people who need housing. We need to build, but we need to build the right way. One united peninsula voice is much more powerful than the voices of 25 individual cities. And when we're negotiating with San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, Los Angeles, we need that united voice. The time, I believe, to wait and see is over. The time to act together is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Next speaker is Michael Nash, followed by Jordan Grimes. We have more speakers now.
How many more do you have?
We have a total of 4, including Michael Nash.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to be speaking after my wife, but I guess that's the way it goes. A lot of what I've seen in CASA is a little scary. The number of bills that are either being written or affected is over 200. And the drafting is being done so rapidly that they actually excluded in one of the most recent drafts the requirement that to get a density bonus that you had to build a multifamily home. So there are those who are calling it the McMansion bill because you could go in, take down whatever is there and build a property line to property line structure if that holds. We think it's a drafting error, but it's indicative of the pace that this thing is going through. It does strip local government of all rights for zoning and property management. You have to look not only at SB 50, that's one of the many. SB 330 takes away additional authorities. The other part that I find somewhat mirthful is this new agency that's going to get $2.5 billion in funding is the MTC, who is going to be providing the staff. The same staff that supports the MTC and ABAG will also support the new organization called HABA. And the concern I have is, if you got a single staff, you're just adding more and more work with a different board, but, it's kind of the same thing with a different color. And if you ask the question of who in this picture dropped the ball the most in our housing needs, I'd have to point to ABAG. Because what Brisbane does, what Millbrae does, what Menlo Park does, affects the whole peninsula. But there doesn't seem to be a process anywhere that said, if Menlo Park's going to screw up and build all these commercial buildings with no housing, then, why is that a reaction other than to say, ABAG, where have you been paying attention to that? The other thing is, nobody's talking about where development makes sense. There are basic rules. Don't build in a flood zone, don't build in a fire zone. What we tend to be doing around here is just pushing all development in the strip, going up and down the coast without any regard for the impact. And we provide no transportation to open up new parts of the state where you can get affordable housing. And that's another big flaw in CASA, is it ignores transportation. So I think this is a very worrying bill and deserves considerable study and a healthy deal of slow it down and get it right. Thank you.
And I actually misspoke. Jordan Grimes is our last speaker on this item. The other two were for the next item.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time. As always, as I'm sure you know, I'm very supportive of the CASA Compact. I do just want to point out a few things. There are over 200 housing bills in Sacramento right now. Not all of them are related to CASA. In fact, many of them aren't. The state legislature has been, especially the past few years, really trying to hammer down on solving the state's housing crisis. So when you actually look at the number of bills that are CASA related, MTC has a tracker. It's really about 15 or 20 bills. It's really not the full 200. The other thing I want to do, I'm sure you're tired of my historical housing shtick by now, but I want to do this anyway. This is from a San Mateo Times article entitled "Experts Say Housing is #1 Problem," published in January of 1980. And the article begins, "Solve your own problems or somebody will solve them for you." 250 representatives of local government were warned Wednesday night by experts at SRI's international headquarters in Menlo Park. They identified the major problem of the peninsula as a growing lack of housing that is forcing out all but the most affluent. This is from Roger Mack, a social economist. "We have a paradox, a housing employment imbalance. Lack of income is not a problem. Lack of jobs is not a problem. The issue really is the availability and affordability of housing. We are creating a new class, the urban unincluded, who cannot hold high technology jobs and who cannot pay for housing." The next comment is from Thomas Fletcher, who is then the director of the Center for Urban Policy. He posited that local governments had a choice, that they could either maintain the status quo, submit to centralization, or buy back some degree of local control and find ways to increase cooperation between local governments and industry. Maintaining the status quo, he said, attempting to go along with things as they are, will only assure the growth of centralization. Remember, this is in 1980. The bottom line is that if you are not prepared to make decisions, the decisions will be made for you and you might not like them. So again, looking back, it's not particularly hard to see why we are where we are. These warnings have come down from experts of all stripe for years and years and years, and we haven't heeded them. And part of that, I do think when it comes to jobs and housing, I would like to see both our city council and other councils push back on the jobs issue. There's a reason that we add jobs. Jobs are a good thing. I'm not one of those people who believes that we should never have jobs in a city, especially as a young employed person who likes being employed. But we need to also add the housing, and I agree that it needs to be done thoughtfully. But this crisis has persisted long enough, and something like this is, in my opinion, badly needed. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much. Okay, that was all we had, correct? All right, good. So we'll bring it back to council. You had comments, Deputy Mayor Frisket?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about CASA just because I do have concerns about that. And I think my concerns with the CASA Compact are a matter of record, starting with the fact that it was originally created without any elected representation from San Mateo County, despite the dramatic impact it would have on every one of our communities. And I'm also concerned that the recommendations of the CASA Compact have been used to support and kind of encourage many of the bills we're seeing on housing right now at the state level. Beside my objection to the process, I also have serious reservations about much of the content. So first and foremost, the loss of local determination regarding the extent, location, and type of construction in our community, for me, is simply unacceptable. San Mateo has been and will continue to be innovative and progressive in creating housing and should not be subjected to one-size-fits-all mandates outside of our control. The CASA Compact proposes to override the will of the voters who overwhelmingly rejected rent control here at the local level, as well as having overwhelmingly rejected statewide more recently. So for me, however well-intentioned, this proposal subverts the democratic process and further erodes faith in government when the ballot box is ignored. The CASA proposes to form a large, new publicly funded regional housing enterprise. And I think the last thing we need is another duplicative level of bureaucracy at the expense of our taxpayers. So we have a lot of essential local needs, looming pension liabilities, infrastructure requirements, and other far better uses for our critical San Mateo dollars. San Mateo is fully represented and actively engaged in numerous regional bodies addressing our regional issues. So I want to thank the staff for their report. I actually liked the 4 action items that are available, and I support them, and particularly think we need to stay in close communication with our newly designated San Mateo County MTC Housing Legislative Working Group representatives. But I think we need to address this even more aggressively so that we can always be in a proactive rather than a reactive posture. And given the intensity and volume of proposals and pending state legislation coming at us, I would like to see a legislative update as a standing item on our City Council agenda until some further time when it's no longer needed. I mean, to me, this would provide our staff, our city attorney, our city manager, and our representatives on CCAG, the TA, and other regional bodies a bi-monthly opportunity to keep us all informed and alert to any of these proposals or pending legislation that could potentially impact San Mateo so that we can respond accordingly. As we saw, there's just so many bills coming forward, too many for individual council members to keep on top of, but I think collectively we could do a better job of looking at those and making sure that we do what's best for San Mateo.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so I share many of the concerns that Councilmember Fresquet just mentioned, so I'm not going to go down them all. I will say that I agree with her request for a standing update. And the one thing that she didn't check off that when I was looking at my notes was that, I really feel that with our cost of living right now, our city's taxpayers are really experiencing tax fatigue. And it's one thing to propose taxes that we know are going to stay in our city, but when I see items in CASA like 75% of the funds will come back to the county, and I wonder, okay, well, what about that other 25%? And then with that 75% that's coming back to the county, I wonder, well, how much of that's going to come back to San Mateo? That if we start increasing all these taxes, I think it's going to be harder, much harder for us to increase or raise money for things that we actually know will stay in San Mateo. So that's a big concern I have.
I just want to echo one of the points, Ron, that you made, which had to do with economic conditions being a big factor. It is the right environment for building only comes around maybe once in a generation sometimes, and we saw a huge drought in building units, in part because of economic conditions. The conditions are good right now. The general plan's moving forward. Now's the time for the city of San Mateo to speak about where they want dense housing to be and where they don't want it to be. And if you don't want it to be in the neighborhoods, then we are going to have to support it in other places close to transit and downtown. And I'd like to see us focus more on that, the solution, than what we don't want to see and trying to slow it down, because when these economic conditions go away, we won't get the housing that we need anymore, and then we'll be complaining about unemployment.
I would concur. These things are going fairly rapidly, and my concern is the taking away of local control so that we can make those sorts of decisions to increase housing where it fits our community. I mean, the fact that this city has increased its housing supply by 11% in the last 3 years really says something about how the city has made housing a priority. And I think we will continue to do so. I concur that we've always been innovative. My concern is that the local control goes away and it's this one size fits all. The other thing that, with respect to bills that are out there and what I'd like to follow, things that have a fiscal impact. if we're going to have some big housing authority that's going to tax our folks and promise to give us 75% back and do a surcharge of 25%, I'd have a problem with that, especially since the housing that might come with it, we're responsible for the infrastructure. So that would be troubling for me. So I guess what I'm seeing is there's some themes that I'd like to keep tabs on. One of them is local control being taken away. The other is what would the fiscal impacts be? And then the third is matters that have already been decided by the voters. Don't want to really see those keep coming up. And then the way to do it, yeah, to be in close contact with the MTC subcommittee that's been formed on the legislative part, because it would be monumental to take on every single bill. They're doing a lot of the work. We can stay in close contact with them. But I would like to see something that we can have as a council so that we're aware and not being so reactive. It's difficult. Ms. Nash pointed out that, maybe we should speak as one peninsula community. But these things are going so fast right now that it's very difficult for us to do that. We have the representatives on that subcommittee, but I don't know, other than us meeting when we meet and hearing about these bills, and if we want to express some opinion either to them or to Sacramento, I don't see any other way to do it other than perhaps some legislative update. It doesn't have to be terribly long, but there are ones that we got on our radar, SB 50, SB 330, which is the one. Oh, I didn't mention that. By the way, SB 330 would limit a city's ability to change its fees and exaction rates. So if we want to raise rates because somebody is developing, or we want to applaud REACH codes, say we enact REACH codes and we want to encourage that, you can get a discount on the fees if you meet the REACH codes. If you don't, you might have to pay more of a fee. We wouldn't be allowed to do that if 330 passes. That affects us fiscally. So those are kind of the benchmarks that I have an interest in, and I would like to know kind of what's going on. It's just too rapid right now, and it would impact our city quite a bit, whether the one-size-fits-all or the fiscal part of it. So that's kind of where I'm honing in on at this moment. We're working very hard on our general plan to make some changes where we can make them, but we got to monitor these things so that our residents can make the most out of the general plan without being dictated from 30,000 feet down. Okay, sorry, yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to rush you. I just, the mayor's comment sparked a thought that I was thinking about before, but I thought about it again, is that another thing that I would appreciate is that while staff is keeping tabs on all these bills, if there are bills that are gonna kind of take away our right to choose something such as fees, developer fees or something, I would like us to be proactive in that. Maybe we should be looking to optimize them before these bills go into effect, if they're going to go into effect. So just keeping an eye on that, because once we lose that discretion, it's gone. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're making the right decisions for San Mateo.
So I have a question. Do we need to vote on getting some kind of a bi-monthly update, or is that something staff can just do?
No, we've heard you, and we'll take that direction and come back with bi-monthly updates.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? So is it, we'll continue on with all those things, 1 through 4, with the addition of getting some updates.
Sure. And I just think, given the council's interest in having updates, I think we'll work collaboratively with city staff just to figure out what the best method, whether it is biweekly, I'm not sure if it's monthly, or how to make sure that you have the information, because things are happening so fast. My concern would be, by the time we write the staff report, it's not going to be accurate.
No, fair enough. I mean,
So
SB 50 was just reduced to counties smaller than 250,000, which excludes Marin, which is pretty close to where all these jobs are, and could prevent some super commutes, and it's difficult.
600,000?
I'd say 1 million.
Yep. No, there was a change in the bill
threshold.
for counties with less than 600,000
You were going
people.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that as it makes sense, we'll plan on a bi-monthly update, but if there's something that's more timely, we'll get back before then. And we'll keep you updated with whatever we know, but as everyone's pointed out, things are moving fast, changing quickly, and we're doing as best as we can to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sacramento has certain deadlines for fiscal bills and bills that are non-fiscal, so we can hopefully, those tracking time frames can help us too. But I appreciate that. I understand. Okay, shall we move on to the next item? Heather Stewart.
Our last
Thank you, Ron.
item this
Thank you.
evening, item 25, Child Care Fund Facilities Project Loans and Application Process Approval.
I think I can see you fine. I'll use these. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Heather Stewart, Senior Management Analyst with Community Development Department. I am excited for tonight's milestone with the city's effort to address the need for more childcare within the city and bring this request for approval on our very first childcare facilities loans. So, building upon work starting way back in 2001, you'll remember that as part of 2017-18 goal setting, the council specifically identified increasing childcare spaces within the city as a high priority. So in October 2018, you then approved the interim child care fund guidelines and the release of the notice of funding available. The NOFA, as it's called, was released on January 7th of this year. An informational meeting was held about the process for potential applicants on January 21st, and the applications were due on February 21st. So the guidelines for the use of funds include these priorities listed on the screen for child care development in the city of San Mateo, summarizing providing the greatest number of both total spaces as well as a number of those that would be available to lower income families, projects that can leverage funds either direct or in kind. And two key priorities are project readiness with the earliest possible completion dates. Considering that this was the first municipal open application for funds specifically for child care facilities within San Mateo County, there had been a great deal of expressed interest in this opportunity, this funding opportunity. So the primary intent of this NOFA was to invite any and all child care development proposals that may be viable and address the city's priorities. Projects ranging from large developments to family child care expansion are possible, but the types and the project amounts that would be requested were primarily unknown at the time of release. Additionally, since the guidelines identify multiple ways that the city can choose to fund child care development, loan and or legal documents had not yet been prepared as part of the NOFA because we were not sure what type of forms would be appropriate based on the types of the projects that would be requesting assistance. So in addition to those funding priorities, we have this slideshow, which identifies the evaluation criteria that were listed in the NOFA and provided to the applicants as to how their proposals would be assessed for viability. These criteria and the funding priorities were the foundations for the committee's review of the applications. Now, I know it's pretty busy, but there is a in the staff report, a little easier to read table. So these are the 7 original applicants for the program, included private, nonprofit, and faith-based organizations. And all of the projects reflected a good distribution of locations throughout the city as well. The committee reviewed and assessed the applications, agreeing to recommend 4 of the 7 projects. One of the projects was just ineligible due to lack of a definitive project site within the city of San Mateo. 2 other projects were not recommended, primarily due to the lack of sufficient project readiness. And the 4th, College Heights Church was originally recommended, but they chose to withdraw their request for the first phase of their tenant improvements to the church facility due to the difficulty in identifying possible contractors willing to consider their small project with the prevailing wage requisites. All of these projects who are not included in tonight's approval request have been invited to reapply when their project readiness is more definitive, with a shorter completion window once the process is reopened. Once we had a better idea of what kind of funding was being requested for what types of projects. There we go, sorry. The types of loans and the related documents thereof would be determining what would be most appropriate for most of the projects now and into the future. So with access to funding for childcare development being one of the identified greatest barriers to developing childcare, it was the city's interest to both first provide security for the city and the funds, but also provide terms that are as feasible as possible for providers and partner agencies. So therefore, the basic loan terms that were identified are reflected on this slide, being 0% interest on the loan. The loans are fully deferred, so no payments are required during the loan. And the loan will be fully forgiven based on no defaults and meeting the requisites identified for the performance in the loan agreement. The length of the loan term forgiveness is based on dollar amount of the loan. So the legal documents are the tools to implement the current loans and will become the template documents for the future. Those template documents are included with the resolution in attachment 1. So these are the recommended funding approval requests tonight for these 3 projects. Peninsula Family Service is the smallest loan. This will expand their existing child care services at their downtown location facility and provide 6 new Head Start infant spaces to very low income families. They are recommended for a 5-year and 20% per year forgiveness period. The following 2 are recommended for 10-year and 10% per year forgiveness. Beresford Montessori requested $265,000, primarily is gap funding. They are a private owner and child care provider who purchased the property on, oh my goodness, the C Street, downtown.
Claremont.
Thank you, Claremont. I didn't write that down. So they are on Claremont and purchased the property and have done many of the tenant improvements, and this is the final component to help them complete the project. St. Andrew's Lutheran Church nearby on El Camino has requested $464,000 to remodel portions of the church property to accommodate the child care facility to be run by Footsteps Child Care, a nonprofit child care provider. So these requests combined provide 86 new child care spaces, 16 of which are targeted for lower income families, for a total request of $774,000 of the $2.1 million identified in the child care facilities CIP project, leaving $326 million remaining for additional projects as soon as we've implemented the ongoing program. And speaking of the ongoing program, we are also asking for approval to move forward with that. This NOFA has informed that process in the development of some of the primary parameters of the program and the documents. Once these loans are executed and the projects have all completed at least one loan draw, borrowers and all of the applicants will be asked for the feedback on their process and their experiences with the NOFA process. So that feedback will help to inform our review, assessment, making any adjustments, and developing program materials that will be completed prior to opening the process up for new projects and new applications. That including a city webpage that will be the primary portal for people to access future application documents. The intent is to have the application be a continually open process, not creating a new notice of funding. A continually open process as long as we have sufficient funding available. Based on these original requests, it's estimated a viable minimum amount to keep funds, amount of funds available to keep the process open would be between $75,000 and $100,000. And then the ongoing process would allow for those applications to be reviewed by city staff in a more directly and timely manner so that they can get the projects built quicker. And it would follow the city's basic purchasing policies and come to you for approvals as appropriate. But it will also help assure that the funds are committed within the legal timeline of the Mitigation Fee Act. So the city retains also, just so to clarify, the city can reserve the funds for ourselves in our own facilities for any identified child care policies. So that could be implementing any of the child care recommendations in the recreation facilities strategic plan, for example. So before I close, and I would like to recognize this milestone moment and first acknowledge the City Council's efforts in prioritizing the community's need for childcare and early learning as directed in your own council strategic directions there. I also would like to take a personal moment to acknowledge the organizations who have worked so very hard to participate in this first funding application process, whether they are receiving loans or not. They have also, many of them, been part of many years of tremendous efforts and commitment by so many advocates, supporters, providers of childcare who have helped us to bring this moment to us today. I know several of them are in the audience tonight. There's still more work to be done and address the gaps, but I believe it's appropriate to take a little moment to celebrate this achievement and milestone. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just have one question. Because I was looking at our guidelines for our child care development fee, and I know it outlines that it actually states priority should be given to projects that provide the highest number and our most enduring number of designated spaces for families with incomes less than 80% of the area median income. But when I look at each of the awardees that are being recommended, Peninsula Family Services is 100%, but Beresford is 12.5%, and St. Andrew's Lutheran Church 12.5%. So I'm just wondering if the committee reviewing this was satisfied with that number. If there was are they providing more spaces already for families that have that need, or is it just that they can't do it? So I was just curious because that was one of our priorities.
And I believe that there are multiple reasons for that. in reviewing some of the materials and speaking with other providers, 13 to 15% of the spaces available for most providers is about average. Peninsula Family Services is a Head Start program, and so they are 100% lower income families. But the trick, one of the difficulties with subsidies to the spaces are the funds available, because it's a state. Many times it's reliant upon the state subsidies, which can vary, and so being able to confirm a certain amount. Some of those are going to be done by strictly tuition cuts, no additional subsidies to pay for the gap in that. So one of the challenges is could they promise more? Potentially. Do they want to, can they commit to that for the term of the loan? Possibly not. And so there's that balance between the two, offering as much as they are comfortable for the period of the loan, as well as is financially viable. They did include that. That was a question we asked with regards to the development budget and the operational budget, and seeing how much was going towards that. And the operational budget line items for childcare is pretty thin as far as income and revenue. So I think they did what they could to fit within the budget and the operational expenses they have accordingly. So would we have liked to have seen more? Of course. Is it primarily a comfortable location, comfortable number? Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. I was curious about that.
Certainly. No questions for me. Did you? Okay.
Yeah, I got a quick question. First off, I just want to thank you and congratulate you and acknowledge you for all your efforts you put into this. It's much appreciated. One quick question. So the 86 spaces that are added, is that like even after the terms of the loan, and we're hoping that's in like perpetuity, or are there, or yes?
Those are identified as ongoing, new, non-existent spaces now that will be ongoing. Yeah, I mean beyond the length of the loan.
Right. That's the answer I was hoping to hear. So thanks.
That was it?
Yeah.
Easy. Councilmember Goethals? No questions. Okay. Thank you so much, Heather. I know it was a evolving process. When it comes to comment time, I will express some comments about how it's been set up. We have speakers, do we not?
Yes, we do. I have 3 speakers, starting with John Latham, followed by Heather Cleary and Christine Padilla.
Excellent. Welcome.
Hi, I'm John Latham. I'm the moderator for College Heights Church. And like Heather, we got really excited about this project and ran into the problem of getting contractors who could qualify. And so we decided, we got our toe in the water, and then the alligator grabbed the toe, and now we're in up to our neck because we're going to pay for, ourselves for phase 1. And that's to have approximately 20% of the building be dedicated to preschool. And part of that is putting a ADA bathroom right in the middle of our entryway. We have a church that's quite an architectural gem. And of course, they put the bathrooms right in the middle of this building. And so we have to figure out how to get these the ADA qualifications and a lot of other qualifications. So I think we're going to spend about $100,000 of our reserves, of our church reserves, and gifts from our members and others to put together phase one. Then the other phases have to do with putting in, I believe it's something like 1,600 square feet of new building. And we're up on top of a hill at Laurelwood, right up at Laurelwood Plaza at the top of Hillsdale, West Hillsdale, and we have a beautiful view of the bay. Huge windows, and we have a kind of a park in the back. You can't see it from the road, but it's a beautiful park-like atmosphere, and we're going to put these buildings around it. That's the plan. We'll just have to see if it's going to work. But we're excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latham. Next speaker.
Heather Cleary.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Heather Cleary, CEO of Peninsula Family Service, and I wanted to thank you all for your commitment to early care and education and to expanding facilities in San Mateo. We are very excited to be able to serve 6 new infants at our site on 2nd Avenue, which will increase our total attendance to 60 children, all of whom are low income. And we are able to offer these services because we have multiple funding sources from both the federal and the state to allow us to finance it. But I wanted to thank you very much personally for all your commitment to this field so we can improve the lives of the children and the families of San Mateo.
Christine Padilla.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Pappen and City Council members. I'm here as a resident and on behalf of Build Up for San Mateo County's Children, an initiative to improve childcare and preschool spaces. I'll keep this brief, but we're very excited. We're so grateful to the City of San Mateo for being one of 2 cities in the whole county to have a childcare development fee. We are very thankful to the city staff for all of their work, especially Heather Stewart, who's been incredible to work with, just wonderful. And we're really happy for the 4 recommended loan recipients, and we're excited to see how these improvements how these funds will translate into improvements and more child care spaces and ultimately benefit children and families in our city. So just thank you so much. I hope you guys take time to celebrate because this has been a great process and we're happy to see it at this point now. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. We always like positive comments.
That was our last speaker.
Okay. Well, since we're on a roll, anyone comments? I'm just glad that we have some flexibility going into the future. There is some additional money sitting there, and I hate to see form over substance. So I appreciate your hammering through this process, Heather. And I appreciate the applicants working with us. Sometimes it's not friendly money, I recognize that, but let's do what we can to keep it going. So with that, did you have any additional comments?
I just wanted to thank Heather. I wanted to thank the members of the review committee for the good work. And I wanted to say I'm proud of San Mateo for being a leader, I think, in our child development fee. It was really shocking to read that the county is facing a shortage of 11,000 child care spaces. It's probably 11,000 plus because that was, I think, from a report several years ago. So, 86 spaces is not a lot, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think it's, I'll look forward to us doing many more of those projects.
Excellent. Okay, with that, shall we entertain a motion?
I will, go ahead, someone else can do it, that's okay. Want me to go ahead, make a motion?
Sure.
Okay. Approve 3 recommended child care fund facility project loans, authorize the city manager or his delegate to execute the loan documents and related documents, and adopt a resolution to appropriate $2.1 million to the child care facilities capital improvement plan project and approve the implementation of the ongoing child care facilities fund application and loan process, including loan document templates.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's great. Passes 4-0. Thank you so much. Okay. So, you have any other items on the agenda?
No.
I think we plowed through them pretty well tonight. Thank you very much, everyone. So we will go to reports and announcements. And you have a report, announcement, or want to close?
The last one.
The last one. I'll get to you in a second. How's that sound? Any reports and announcements from our city manager, city attorney? Okay. Yes? And
Just one announcement that I was selected with, along with Dawn Horsley and Emily Beach from Burlingame to represent the Transportation Authority on the JPA for the managed lanes. So I look forward to being involved in that and to bringing back regular updates to the City Council.
I'll see you there.
Yes.
Okay, did you have a couple items?
I was just going to say, I look forward to not being able to say we're not well represented on that buddy.
San Mateo will be well represented.
Yes, we will.
For sure. I had just a couple items. Library Gala was a huge success, was it not, to the Nash that's sitting over there? Lisa Nash is on our Library Commission. It was really just an amazing evening. They raised a ton of money for the foundation, and it was the most pleasant auction I've ever been to. It was like, and do you have $100? Thank you so much for that $100. I mean, it was very pleasant. They had a woman, her name is Caitlin McGinty, is born and bred in San Mateo, and she was in Beach Blanket Babylon, tremendous stage presence. And then we also had Michael McFall, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, and regaled us with great stories. It was just a really cool time to be a library fan in San Mateo that night. The next thing is this weekend, May 11th, there is a race, a foot race, Stride for Awareness. PAL is a co-sponsor of that. I see our police chief in the back. And it is to raise awareness for mental health issues, and especially those that affect many of our youngsters in San Mateo. And it's an issue that's often overlooked, but it really shouldn't be. So I will be there. And one, Alexa Latini, who happens to be related to Diane Papin, will be singing the national anthem.
And I will be there too, but I will be walking, not running.
Hey, I'll be right there with you, sister. You were there last year too.
Yes.
And then the final thing was, speaking of preschools, I did go to the San Mateo Co-op Preschool's 70th birthday party. And it was really darn cool to see all of these former preschool directors. I mean, these are people that really cherish and understand little ones. And it was a cool event. So I'll think of some other things, because with that, I think we should wrap up. It's been a long evening. Thank you, everybody, for your good brains. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Goethals, who perhaps wants to adjourn in someone's memory. Or
Yes, please.
Okay.
We are diminished. Thomas Ikes, who was born March 31st, 1939 and died April 19th, 2019, was a member of our local community and a longtime police officer for the city of Burlingame. And he is survived by his daughter, Kari, who has done many great things for the city of San Mateo, and John DiMatteo. So they are part of his extended family, and we mourn this tremendous loss. He lived a very good life and served others, and if we could, just have a moment of silence for him.
Thank you. And with that, we'll be adjourned.